Great room. Michael, we're live, and once we have everyone in, you may begin when you're ready.
All right. Welcome everybody to tonight's full DRB meeting. This is November 14th, full design review board meeting. I call us to order. We have a quorum of 6 out of our 9 members. I don't have any opening remarks. So do I hear approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Staff, do we have any last meetings minutes to approve?
Yes, we have October 17th and November 7th.
That's easy. So do I hear a motion to approve October 17th and November 7th meeting minutes?
So moved.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right, well then we will get right into the agenda tonight. So first up is 12009 Turf Lane. Is the applicant here?
Yes, the applicant's here and their architect is here, asking them both to unmute.
Hello. Hello, Shonda. Hi, team.
Hello.
Oh, Praveen, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We are looking at, I guess, your final approval for your house project.
Yes.
So we're obviously all familiar with it, but if you could walk us through kind of mainly just kind of the updates that we asked for would be
Sure.
the kind of ideal way to approach this, and then we'll ask you any questions that we may have. Okay.
Perfect. And I think, Lashonda, I had sent you, I think the PowerPoint slides I sent last time worked really well. I just sent some of those updates on. I think the main ones you had was the color. There was one. So I updated the color because I think there was something on the screen that even I was not happy with the color. So that one has changed up. I think it was actually John who pointed it out. And then the HVAC unit specification and details came up, as well as I think the lot coverage and the trees. So I think those should all be on the supplemental slides that I sent you all. The color should be, basically it's a darker blue. There we go. But this is the last. Can we start is this the second slide, Lashonda?
Yes, this is the
Okay.
charcoal blue.
Perfect. So yeah, this is that charcoal blue that would go, this is more what we were envisioning, and this would go well with the Ipe that we're also planning on the outside. So if there's no questions, then I'll skip to the next slide. Shonda, thank you. And then I think there was some question as to what was what in the back here. So, right here is concrete pavers there that you see. And then the Ipe, I think they actually either boards or they do sell sort of Ipe planks. And that is the concept for us right now. But as we had mentioned before, once this actually gets further along in the way, we will have a detailed landscape design. But in general, this is what we're thinking. And then I put a little more detail on the next couple of slides as well. If you can go to the next one, Lashonda. Yeah, so this is also on the document that was sent to you all from the architects as well, kind of pointing these out, but I just want to point them out more in this sort of obvious format here. So you can see where exactly what I've labeled as the concrete, Cortan steel, where it is there, and grass. I think that they had asked for the heights of the retaining walls, and these is what the heights are here on both the right and the left side. Those 4 beams on the left are glulam beams, and then the ones closer by the screened-in porch on the left would be Ipe as well over there. Thanks, Lashonda. And then you see I just put in a little bit on the landscape piece. I added more detail, but I think the key sort of feature looking out that window would be a Japanese maple for us, so we could see it burning in the wintertime. And then you can go to the next slide. And then this was questions on the HVAC unit. And then I think Michael may have very astutely asked, it looks like there's only one, but a house of that size is probably going to need two, and that is absolutely the case. On the revised plans, there are actually two. And I think there was questions about, is this going to be an issue for the neighbors or not? But the truth is, it's actually tucked away in a little alcove when you look at it. Trying to see if it's on here or not, but this one probably does not have it. Yeah, actually, right behind on the top middle where it says proposed one-car garage, right behind there says proposed patio, that tiny little area. Go down just a little bit, LaShonda. Yep, right there. That little alcove there is actually a small, that is where the two AC units would be. So that would be tucked away. That's much easier to see on the schematics that Christian and Alan had sent over. And then,
Page 4 shows the location of the road.
oh, great. Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep. You can see it on the left-hand side over here. This one's rotated by 90 degrees, but yeah, right behind the wood shop there. So it is tucked away. And then we took away the generator because we just felt like, well, in the last couple of years, when we first moved here 14 years ago, I think the electricity used to go out quite a bit. So we were considering that, but honestly, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been much better. I think they've just been Dominion's been doing a great job with cutting the trees down. So we just took that away. So that's no longer there. It's just the two condenser units. And then on the slide before that you had, LaShonda, that one has the rough outline of the landscape plan that we were thinking about. And it really is getting native trees in, many of which we're planting and replanting. So we already have many emerald green arborvitae. We have a Kwanzaa cherry on the lot as well. We have a couple of Tuscarora crepe myrtles. We have 2 Japanese maples already. And we have 3 dogwoods. I don't think they're Cherokee Princess, but they are 3 dogwoods. And then you can see in the top right corner is the rain garden or the bioretention field. And that one is also full of native species for not only Virginia, but Northern Virginia. You can go to the next slide, LaShonda. Oh, and maybe this is it.
No, we're gonna go on page
yes.
7. Okay.
And I just wanted to point out, because I think there was a question last time as to, gosh, it seems like there's, if you can go back to that slide that you were just on. Yeah, this one. Because it seemed like there was questions about, wow, it seems like trees are being cut down, but I just wanted to point out, I went around, and where these pictures are is literally what you're looking at when you stand and look through from our lot. And so, you can see our lot is very, very wooded. So contrary to what, what it would look like, even with our trees coming down, the ones that need to for the silt fence and whatnot, it's such a wooded area and a wooded lot. And I think there was also a question about where our closest neighbor was. We only have one contiguous neighbor, and that's on the top of the screen right there. You can kind of see their house behind those trees there. And most of those trees are on their lot. So there's very few that would actually need to come down for us. On that backside. And then on the front here that you see right along Turf Lane, I planted a majority of those trees when we first moved in here 14 years ago because it was just an open view of the road. So we put in this natural fence, and it has grown up really well. And those don't need to be taken down because it's far enough away. So I think I just wanted to point that out, that there's so many trees still on our lot. We have a very wooded lot. And then I don't know, is anything to add, Mal or Christian? Or
I think the HVAC is screened as well in that drawing. I was going to point that out. So there is a screen around the outside of it. So it's pretty concealed. And the new equipment should be at the level of equipment that they're purchasing, should be pretty quiet.
Perfect. Okay. Could we go to the next slide? Let's see if there is. And I think this is basically updated renderings with you could see the sconces that we had pointed out in the last presentation, where they're only down pointing. They are dark sky compliant. They're just simple cylindrical sconces that keep in line with the modern look of this house. And they're on the outside of every exit and on either side of the garage, and then you can see them going around as well. And I think you could go to the next one, LaShonda, please. And similarly here, you can see them on the outsides of these doors as well. And next one, LaShonda. Oh, and then this just has an update of the windows, the jambs, because I think that was an ask as well for us to update that, and the window trim. And we updated on the BIMX as well, Michael, just so you could see it. I think there was a question about the door looking different than what we had picked out, so that's also been changed to be more coherent. I think this might be it. LaShonda, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's good.
There was a ask about the grading plan, which is on page 13, and then page 16 that shows the 2-story lot coverage.
Yes, so this was an ask as well, and I think we have that in the stormwater information. And I think if there's was there anything else?
Those were all of the additional requests from the DRB. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There was a tree inventory, which is on page 17 and 18 in the replanting plan that we already saw.
There was one item that, if you could help point us out, there was a question about the massing comparatively to the neighbors. Could you give the DRB information relative to that, please?
Yeah, in terms of where their home is, I think you can kind of see it. Actually, this one is perfect. You could see where our house is, and it gives you the approximate adjacent dwelling. That's not their full home. But that is the distance to their home. And they actually already have a fence up along that line there. And that is our only contiguous neighbor. And they're very excited for our renovations to get started too. Cam, does that answer that?
I believe it does. I think the other comment was about the second-story addition and the height comparison against the neighbors.
Oh, I didn't realize there was a comparison with the neighbors, but yeah, we can look at it from here. I mean, I think I don't know, Bruce, do you want to? Christian, do you want to speak to that one and kind of point out where that second story is and how thoughtfully it was done? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. On the adjacent property, the house is 2-story and as well, and it is, like they said, very much screened by the trees. And there is, when you look at the house, I wish we had photographs of it, because you can kind of see when you get up closer to it that it's not oriented that way. It's more oriented to the street and to the backyard and not to that side yard. And in terms of overall building height, I don't have a measurement of their house, but we are very low slung because of our low pitches. And so I feel like the houses are congruent in terms of just overall massing. And we don't have, it's not the majority of the house is single story. Then they're kind of out of the view or fry of the house as well.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll just piggyback on that. I think one of the key things that we wanted to do with this house, we love that our house, when you drive up to it, it looks very small, and there's just a sliver that goes along the top. And this house is very much geared like that, where it's got lower roof lines for pretty much the entire house, except that left side where it's second story, and that's just where the 3 bedrooms and 1 office is up top. But otherwise, the rest of the house is just single story. It's very low. It's not going to be casting huge shadows on the landscape or on neighboring homes. And so I think that for most of the other houses that are in our cul-de-sac that are all stacked homes, this one is going to feel low because, like I said, the majority of the house is single story. It's just that one part on the left-hand side that is 2 stories.
And also, as we cited the house too, as you come in, if you come up the street and turn in, the idea was that we would keep it very low slung to the street. And actually, Praveen, I don't remember, this house is, I don't think it's much taller than the house you have.
Oh, I don't know if it's any taller at all.
Yeah, I think we're right. I think we're within inches of the other house. So I don't feel like we're, it's more of it, but in terms of overall height. It's also probably the quietest side of the house too.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was going to comment is it's actually, you guys have positioned the house where your backyard is no longer looking at that house. So I think it's much more successful in that manner where it's kind of, you've positioned it differently, which I think helps that cause to the neighbor where, before if you had built this big, backyard, courtyard looking right at their house, it might be a little more intrusive. But since you've turned the house about, I don't know, 60 degrees, I think it limits the impact on the neighbor. Mine is getting a little closer to their lot line, but other than that, you're respecting the setbacks and everything. So I think overall it's been positioned nicely. So yeah. So anyways, that's just my 2 cents. What I'd like to do is go around to see if anyone has any questions for y'all, and then we'll have some discussion and then we can take a vote. Okay.
Great.
Mike B, did you have any questions for them?
No, I appreciate the additional site development details, the drainage plan, grading details, etc. I really appreciate you guys bringing all that stuff to us. I don't have anything else at this juncture, Michael. Thank you.
Okay. John, did you have anything?
Nope.
Brian, did you have anything?
I only have maybe 2 questions. One about the architecture, one about the kind of landscape. So Patrick or Lashana, could you go to slide 7? It's looking at the front elevation, basically with the front door. And I only have a question for, it looks like one of the big changes from the previous review to this one is, that piece where the front door is that kind of low, that low roofed area was more of the blue siding before, and like the front door was like an accent in wood, but now it's wood all the way across. So I was just curious about like why you changed it that way. I just wanted to understand that a little bit more.
When we were working on it and we were working through the materials, it kind of became very patchwork. And what we've worked on doing is taking where the front door is. In design conversations, we refer to this center part of the building as the pavilion. And so when you look at it in plan, you can really see it like it's very much a collection of buildings. And the pavilion, in our mind, is kind of the highest quality of part of the building. And so we used it was looking kind of a little blotchy to us. So we put that all in one material and put the primary, what I would call the higher end material there. And so it's kind of like these other buildings have either, grown or evolved off of the side of it. And that's kind of the core launch of the building.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you. And then if you go to slide 18, we were kind of looking at like a tree preservation plan. I think I agree with you that, right now your side is very heavily wooded, and especially it's like that edge along Steeplechase I'm just concerned about by looking at this plan, because right now like it is kind of screened all the way across, and now obviously your house goes basically almost lot line to lot line, and it's that connection right at Steeplechase. So if you zoom in there, it's right where your cursor is. There's kind of a break between what's labeled as QP on the left, and then you've got about 4 or 5 trees that look like being cut down there. So I'm just wondering and it's just maybe more of a suggestion than anything, is to look at that and try to reestablish like a tree line or some kind of screen there because I feel like I'm worried that's going to feel really close to the street. And right now, in your house now and everyone in your neighborhood is very, very set far back from the street, and this is really getting close. So I just wonder about that because right now it's feeling like a bit of an opening, which seems very different than what you've got now.
Yeah, I think that is a very well point taken. In fact, that place that you're pointing out right there, that go a little bit further to the left, Lashana, with the cursor. Yeah, right above there, that corner, there is actually a design feature that we held over from our current home that we loved called the conversation pit. I think many of the Reston homes had them from back in the 60s and we just loved it. That is actually where a conversation pit is going to be. So I think it's not lost on us that there is going to be a very thoughtful landscape plan for right there to ensure that we have some sort of screening there. But like I said, the other thing I want to just point out also is that even though it looks like those X's are there, because I went through and walked with Bruce, the builder, to say, hey, which ones of these are actually going, before we were going to walk through with the arborist as well. And there's so many, I guess, smaller caliber trees, but still they're like, it would take me two hands to get my hands around them, that are still there along the berm, along Steeplechase. So there is tree cover there. It's not going to feel completely bare, but yes, that area in particular, I think we'll take that suggestion and be very thoughtful about what's getting planted there.
Yeah, Brian, I think that like a certain amount of shrubbery, like lower, denser things also could kind of fill both, visual and probably acoustically for anything going around there too.
I agree. I think either, that doesn't have to be, large trees. I think where you're saying like on lower scale would be totally fine. I just think that it's going to be so different. The position of the house in relation to Steeplechase now, I think it might just kind of soften that a little bit, just the way it's reading there. So, but anyways, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Jim, do you have anything?
No, it looks like it's developed really nice. I mean, I commend you guys on a really nice design. Looks like it'll be a really nice project.
Thank you.
Elena?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, you guys provided everything we needed, so we appreciate that. And I think overall, it's come nicely together. And I think the one story appears like it sprawls over the site a lot more, but I think it's very well placed on the site and still kind of creating kind of this private zone for you guys while still respecting your neighbor. I think it definitely helps, obviously, that you only do have one neighbor, but that, you took advantage of the site. So I think that's great. So I don't have any questions. Do you guys want to have some discussion? Does anyone want to make a motion?
Emily is on
Emily's online.
Oh, Emily's on now. Oh,
yeah. Hi guys. Sorry I was a little late. I was having some issues getting on the Wi-Fi.
You got any questions?
So I just wanted to one, say thank you for all the hard work that you've put in. We asked you to submit a lot of additional information, and you guys have come through with that. So I really do appreciate it. I am concerned, which I stated in the previous meeting, about overall lot coverage and the stormwater management implications and the removal of trees. It's looking at page 17 at the removal scope. We've got some, like for instance, there's a 60-inch willow oak that is in good condition that is slated to be removed for this construction. And along with, I believe, 25 other trees, if I'm counting correctly. And I hear from the homeowners over and over again that they love the wooded lot. It is a very wooded lot. But when this is all said and done, when the construction is over, this won't be a heavily wooded lot anymore. It is just the nature of the beast with builders, with grading plans, and with all of this site development. There's even some trees that are outside of the site development. For instance, I can't see which one it is on this plan, but down in the corner here with that large critical root zone, we see this over and over again. We will likely lose that tree in the next 2 to 5 years from construction damage, from machines driving over roots and grading plans and so on and so forth. So I don't really have a question so much as a concern with the precedent that this will set in Reston. You know, all of this is above board with the county, but this is really the first project of this type that we have encountered. And I'm worried that we are setting a dangerous precedent with the amount of tree removal that we are allowing and saying it's all well and good to replace another 26 trees back on this lot. But when we're talking about a 2-inch caliper versus a 60-inch tree, none of us have a time machine, unless somebody here does. Please let me know, but none of us have time machines. And I am worried about the impact on the lot from a tree canopy perspective and from, you know, what this is going to look like in Reston in the future. And then also just from stormwater management, what is adjacent to the lot where that bioretention pit is slated? Because it looks like its overflow weir is slated, you know, very close to the property line and also to dump downhill onto a neighboring lot, which again, it looks like if I was looking at, I believe, what was it, page, if we scroll up into the neighborhood summary of that site, which is page 13, lot 29C and lot 63. 63 appears to be a small sliver. I'm not sure if that's DRB owned or not.
That's DRB owned.
Yeah, so if that is a wooded property, again, it's just a lot of runoff that we're looking at. And I'm worried about the implications of this, you know, very cool building. And I do applaud its architectural detail and how it's sited on the lot. I'm just worried that we're creating a lot of issues that, you know, I've seen in the future and in a lot of my job sites. But that infiltration bioretention basin, the county changes those details every 5 years at this point because they keep having issues with every, you know, type that they're installing. And I'm worried about this bioretention basin in this corner of the lot that's going to get clogged and going to overflow, and what that's going to do to the neighboring properties and the erosion of the property. So I know I'm spewing quite a lot, but I mean, again, I want to emphasize, I do think this is beautiful. You know, you've gone through and you've done a lot of work, and it does meet Fairfax County requirements. I just want to put forth to my fellow DRB members what this is going to do in terms of setting a precedent in Reston. So,
I think it's a good question. I think one thing that I didn't realize, and maybe it's just because I went a little quickly on it, was tree number 4 with this 60-inch willow oak. Where is that on the site? Because the tree plan, unless I'm misreading it, I can't see any numbers, but maybe I'm just, is it that big tree kind of centered in the back, or where is this tree number 4? The big 60-inch willow oak.
That would be in the back right corner.
where that infiltration trench is going in,
Yeah,
basically.
to facilitate the
No, because there's actually just dead trees back there. In fact, both my neighbor Craig and I have had multiple trees fall. In fact, he had a dead tree fall in his home. And one of the ones that's slated, that's just at the corner there, X, is already dead. And I have people knocking on my door multiple times a week asking if they can cut it down. I want to say it's more in the middle of the back, but I would have to check.
Like if you're looking at go to slide 17 where it's calling out the tree removals. I think that's right. Yeah. So do you know roughly where that tree is? Is there any chance to save that thing, or is it in, if we did some sort of root trimming or something to that effect? Depending on the closeness, if it's on the perimeter by the silt fence, we might, there might be some sort of, techniques we can do to save it. But if it's, too close to the house, then obviously it's probably not gonna, there's nothing we can do about it. But I'm just curious because I didn't realize that there was that substantial of a tree on the property. that was coming out in the project until I just was pointed out to it by Emily.
Yeah, that's several of them. There's a 60-inch willow oak, there's a 32-inch red maple, 56-inch red maple that is in poor condition. So that one,
Yeah, so I'm
probably
kinda
good
looking
and
at all-
recommend.
Correct. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at all the ones that say good condition. So the other
Mhm.
I guess, big one would be this 32-inch red oak. That's tree number 23 that said it's off site, which means we must be impacting it. Is that in the neighbor's property, Praveen?
The red oak.
Yeah.
I have 3 red oaks between myself and Craig.
It says it's off site. So
So it might be just on that Reston Association property, because I know that we have 3 of them that we share. And I'm thinking that 60 inch is that middle X. So they're like the 3 that are in the top right. So not necessarily by a retention field, but right there. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think what we would want to do is walk around with the arborist and really see, because I know that, I mean, Bruce was telling us, I'm not sure if he's on right now or not, but when we do the pre-con meeting and we do walk around with the arborist, that's when we'll try to save as many as we possibly can. Because I think the way to go, and this is what we were saying with our civil engineer was saying was, listen, I need to be as conservative as possible to begin with Fairfax County, because it never goes well the other way. There's huge fines, and it's always harder to say you've approved something and the plans are approved, and then there's something else that you have to cut. So it's rather that you want to be conservative to begin with, and then walk the lot and try to save as much as we could. And I did walk the lot with Bruce, and there was actually, I want to say 2, 3, 4 trees, and I'm wondering if those are the 4 big ones. That were not obviously on the new driveway or something, because that's tougher to save. But there were 4 of them that we asked the civil engineer about and said, hey, listen, these are really far away from the house. What are the chances? And he said, listen, there is a chance that we can, but right now I just need to be as conservative as possible with Fairfax County.
Right. And the issue with that is that if it's inside the silt fence, the county's going to count it as gone. And really, other than saying I pinky swear promise that my crews are going to take good care and not cause damage to it, is that neither the county nor we have any guarantee that there will actually be any care. We're not going to go out every single day during construction and make sure materials aren't being piled on a root system, that no one's driving machines over it. And again, because of trees' life cycles, these things can take 2 to 3 years to actually show the signs of construction damage. But, they took 50 years to get here. So if I encourage my fellow DRB members to consider that if it's inside that silt fence and the tree preservation line, that it is gone. Because other than, maybe we put that in writing that we want it to be preserved or that we want a revised tree preservation plan. But from a county perspective and from a legality perspective, nothing inside of that tree preservation area is required to be saved, and nor do we have any guarantees that it will be protected during the course of construction, which is going to be a long time. So,
can you all hear me? Hello?
Yep. Hey, Bruce, we can hear you now.
I've been on. I just was able to unmute right now. Those trees that you see within the silt fence line there have been identified as trees that potentially could not be saved. However, doing this for 20 years, I will say this. I've had many clients that were very adamant about trying to preserve special trees that they had on their lot that they wanted to keep. A lot of times what also could potentially happen here is, and again, Praveen and I walked the lot. There were several trees there that he would like to keep. But again, based upon the grading plan, and of course, how you get into the lot and how you bring your machinery in there, also has a lot to do with it too. However, I have exercised before where we have done not only some type of root verberization, but we've also done mulch around the tree, around the canopy drip line, and we've also put a super silt fence around it. And if it was possible for us to do that, we would exercise all those type of processes to preserve the trees. Sometimes it's been successful, sometimes it has not. Has nothing to do about running over them or anything. It's just, it has a lot to do that sometimes the tree goes through shock. A lot of times also too, when you cut down trees that are next to it, sometimes these trees are diseased. A lot of the sawdust will then filter over to the other tree, and then before you know it, within 3 or 4 years, it starts to fail. So there's a lot of reasons why a tree could fail. But yes, a cause could be where, you know, there's machinery on it, they're placing tools on it, there could be materials on it. However, we have exercised before trying to preserve trees by putting extra protective measures around it, and like a super sill fence and things like that. So I can tell you that Praveen and his wife have extensively walked that lot, and we've discussed it. And I can tell you he's trying to preserve as many trees as possible. But as we all know too, you know, sometimes to make an omelet, you have to break an egg, and this is something that they don't want to do. But to move forward with the house and the way it's positioned, it's unfortunately some of these trees will be susceptible and will have to come down.
Yeah, so if I think out of all things, if those two specific trees could be better labeled, and I don't know if your civil engineer is on, of where tree number 4 is, and I believe it's tree number 23 is. Those are the two that are in good health now. One's not even on your property. It says it's on off-site property. I'd just be curious to know. I mean, I know I see the tree root pruning details. I just would like those better labeled, so then we can see if potentially those could, if there's any way, you know, hey, we can at least try, and if survival rates, you know, 50% is better than 0. So I think at a minimum, if we could just get those labeled, so we could be a little bit more clear on pretty much anything that's labeled good on this chart here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trees. Just so we could see kind of where they are. I mean, one just has a 4-inch radius. That one, the Eastern Red Cedar, I'm not too worried about that one. There's a 32, the 18, the 28, even the 8 for the white mulberry, you know, not too concerned about it. But any of these super mature trees that have been here for longer than your house, probably, I'd like to just see them labeled, and then see if there's any other ways to do some sort of tree preservation zone, you know, around them. If they're, you know, the good news is you don't have a ton of houses that are, or a ton of trees that are right up on your house. But these are all kind of incidental damage, essentially, is the way I would label them. So I think overall the design, the design aesthetic of the home itself is it fits in the neighborhood. It meets our guidelines for an infill development. I think the only last standing thing would be these couple trees. So with that said, I don't want to slow down you guys in your, you know, development. So, I mean, how fast do you think you guys could label these trees and maybe have a plan in place if they are within, you know, more of an outer area, that maybe you could have some sort of, you know, there's already root pruning details and tree preservation notes on the site plan. Maybe I liked Bruce's note about potentially even adding an additional silt fence, you know, I don't know if I would mulch fully around them if they have any sort of exposed roots. I would let them maybe, you know, just maybe the additional silt fence around them just to keep people out, essentially, would be kind of maybe the best option. I don't know, Emily, if you have any input on that, but I from what I've been told is that you don't want to mulch over top of exposed roots, because then that's part of the tree that's breathing. So you don't really want to mulch over that.
Temporary mulch or pine fines to help displace the weight of equipment during construction is a good idea. Honestly, it just helps spread things out. What I would like to see, if at all possible, because a lot of these trees, I mean, Michael called it incidental, are actually due to the fact that the lot is going to be regraded quite significantly. We're moving a lot of earth in order to accommodate this larger footprint and to manage stormwater. I mean, if we look at page, what is it? page 18, you can see the topography lines that are going to be the areas that we're going to be regrading all the way around the house. You could see on kind of the north, or I guess the top side of the lot, there's a pretty intense swale. All of that area is going to be regraded. It looks like we're going to be doing lots of cut and fill. And I would ask you guys if we can find any other way to accomplish this grade change and manage the stormwater that would have less impact on the trees, because there's a world where you put in one retaining wall and we don't have to do this amount of heavy grading, and you could potentially save lots of earthwork, which is going to help the long-term health of the trees that are on site. Because I mean, you're digging out quite a lot of earth and moving it around, which is what is going to cause so much damage to the area. That's why the silt fence area is so big. It's because they have to regrade the entire site in order to accommodate the new house and not have it flood every single rainstorm. So I personally would like to see if there's anything that they can do in terms of more creative solutions rather than just move dirt, which will damage all of the trees. If we can find a better way to preserve the canopy while still mitigating the stormwater needs of the new home, that would be something I'd like to see.
The only thing I'll point out, Emily, is that, and this is just something I know from living here for 14 years, is it's just surprising that there is grading, but I'm not sure how much that changes. The only reason I say that is because I know my neighbor that is Craig, that's on that other lot that you were saying, hey, who's there, and that between the Reston Association owned lot, and he's all the way back. If you follow where the bioretention field is, that line to the right, and you go back like 200 feet, that's where his house is. And he's a good friend of mine. We talked when we first moved in, that's where the rainwater goes. Anyways, in fact, there's like probably a bit of a river that goes down there when it does rain. And I was speaking to Christian earlier today, and he's like, some of what we're doing is probably going to actually improve that to this point. Like, this house was built in the 60s. No one was looking at stormwater management back then, and nothing has been done for stormwater management since then. So if anything, I think, putting that there will actually probably help him quite a bit. So it's just interesting because we're talking about, oh, we're moving earth and this is going to be completely different. And if you go back and look back there, that land naturally slopes down back there anyways. They may be just moving it further a bit, but it's already they're going along with the natural grade that's already there.
No, and I hear you, Praveen, about that you're not changing, you're not making downhill be uphill from now on, but you are going to move a lot of dirt in order to make water go around the new footprint of the house. And the moving of that dirt is in large part what's going to damage the tree's root system. So if there is a way to deal with the stormwater, still get it to go downhill, still get it to go into the RA property, water does flow downhill, that's fine. But if we can figure out how to do it without regrading the entire lot, you could save a significant portion of the trees that you have on site, which is something that you guys have professed to want to do. So that would be my suggestion, is figure out a way that we can do this without simply moving earth around. There's lots of different ways to skin this particular cat. And I think that you could find a way to at least balance the amount of tree removal versus the amount of grading that you're doing on site, in order to, still make a safe area for your home. Again, I don't want your house to flood. It's going to be beautiful, but moving dirt around is the path of least resistance, and it's the one that cuts all the trees down. So
understood. That makes sense.
And I would say though, Emily, so I have the screen of the new development up versus the current site plan, and Praveen is right. I mean, that backyard is actually pretty much staying the exact same slope. There's a little bit of the contour of 434 that's changing slightly, but it's going right through the middle of those three trees there. And it's pretty much staying just there. That's exactly how it currently is, and that's where it's staying. So that's why I'd be curious is if that is in fact that 60-inch willow oak, if there would be a way to save it, because it doesn't seem like we're piling up a bunch of dirt around it. We're not, moving a bunch of dirt over it. If anything, that courtyard, I don't know what the full construction of it is with all those steps, and some of that Ipe decking, if it's kind of built as a deck or is it going to be dirt? I'm not really sure. I just think if we could show potentially those big trees, show where they are, see if there's any way to try to save them. I think that would be, it sounds like it's in your interest as well as our interest. So at least let's try. And like I said, 50% is better than zero. It looks like most of the dirt is getting moved actually up front from what I can see. Contour 438 currently goes through like the right in the middle of your house, whereas now it's going to be very close to the front of your driveway, kind of middle front of that driveway there. So I think most of the dirt, Bruce, how much dirt are you guys having to haul off? Are you guys completely balanced on site? Or are you guys going to have to move off a bunch of dirt? Do you know?
Yeah, hello. Okay, because Christian's also trying to get online here too. He's trying to unmute and to talk too. No, so basically, most of the house, there's only 900 square feet in the basement there that we're going to be of the basement, and then the rest of it is going to be a 4-foot wall, stem wall all around there with dirt underneath it, with insulation and stuff. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to move a lot of this dirt around so that it's underneath the 1 story. I'm anticipating probably like around 60 loads leaving there.
Okay.
That's not much. That's about average.
And that's what I wanted to make sure that you guys weren't balancing the site. Because if you're balancing the site, then I do think Emily's right, where there's a bunch of dirt getting moved around trees and stuff, and that's what's causing a lot of the issue. But if you guys are hauling off a decent amount, then that's good.
Yeah.
Because like I said, from what I'm looking at the contours, it's really just that front yard that's really getting leveled a little bit to be a little bit closer to grade level, or sorry, street level, versus what it is now. It seems like it dips down a little bit, and we're kind of leveling that out a little bit. So with all that said, I think overall we need to go. I just want to keep us moving forward. I think all that's, in my opinion, and I'm just one board member, I would make a motion to approve the application with just the requirement to submit a just updated tree plan showing the good quality trees be labeled, and show any means possible to save them if more of an incidental tree rather than a must removal, and see if there's any ways that we can employ tree preservation techniques for the redevelopment. That would be my motion.
Can I ask a point of clarification, Michael?
Yes.
You'd like everything that was labeled as good to
Good.
be number. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of them that are pretty small caliper that I'm not too concerned about, but at least, might as well just get them labeled so that way I can see where they are. And, a good tree is, if we can save it, let's save it. Right. So.
Yep. To that point, I'll second the motion.
I have a point of clarification as well. Did you want that plan to come back to full board, or could it go to a lower level, and what would the timeline be?
I mean, I think it'd be best to come back to full board just so we have all the array of expertise on the board to be able to review it. And let's say they could resubmit it within the next 60 days. I mean, I don't think it's going to take them more than about 30 minutes to label the trees. So it's more of just labeling so we know where they are. And then hopefully we can employ some of the tree preservation techniques that are already on the plans, but designate those trees and maybe provide additional tree preservation techniques. Maybe, so like we talked about, the additional silt fence to protect them, basically no-go zone for any construction vehicles, piling of materials, etc. So, in having that perfectly labeled so we know that tree was tried to be saved versus just saying it's a goner because it's within the silt fence.
Michael, another clarification point.
Yep.
My understanding is that the homeowner wants to begin this project. If you're giving an approval procedurally, I would anticipate the homeowner wanting to move forward, and the next full DRB is not until January.
Okay.
So if procedurally, if you're going to approve it, you should either decide whether or not you would like to continue the in concept for final approval in January. Otherwise, the procedurally an approval with this last bit of information to be approved by the DRB, it may not necessarily be the best method.
Okay. Praveen, what's your project schedule? You guys have building permit approved, sites approved, everything's approved with the county?
It's in that process right now. And so from what I'm being told from Bruce, we should be able to get demolition started mid-December.
So
That would be our strong preference, but
knowing that the house, the design of it overall is I think ultimately our motion, at least let me rephrase it, my motion is to designate these trees. And if, let's say, that 60-inch tree is in the way of the addition completely, let's say it's one of these that is down kind of at the south of the site, or I guess it's I don't know, that's the west of the site, that's down towards Steeplechase Drive, that's right in the middle of the addition. I know that has to come out, right? But to me, some of these incidental trees, like if it's more like the one that you think it is there on contour 434, to me, that's not impacting the development itself. It's more of just an additional means of trying to save the tree. So I would be okay with, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cam, but I think we could give an approval with basically saying we need a follow-up tree preservation and landscaping plan. Let's call it. We've approved developments before where the landscaping plan maybe isn't initially figured out, because it may change our insight, right? We may say, okay, that tree's got to go. We know it's going now. We now want you to plant another tree back on that exact same contour once the ground has stopped moving and the earthwork is done. Now let's put back a tree exactly where that was, as an example. I'm just throwing it out there. I know in your landscaping plan, you guys have some trees going back there. They're not quite to the caliper of what that tree is, but I think it's very typical where we could approve it and then just require a landscape plan as kind of almost an additional requirement, but doesn't slow down the development, if that makes sense, Cam. Do you think that could work?
Cleaner would be to approve the project without the tree removals, and for the property owner to come back in January.
With an entirely new application?
No, you could motion to defer the portion of the tree removals to the January board meeting.
Just the portion of the tree removals?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. I think that might keep it the cleanest, Praveen, if that.
can I just ask what that would mean?
It's still, I mean, technically you have an approval on the house still. It's just basically, like I said, it's a landscaping.
Because it's not going to take us that long to get it to you. We could probably get it to you within the next, like you said, we just need to get to the civil engineer. We'll number it.
Yeah.
But I mean, as we've professed, and Emily said, we've professed multiple times, this is part of the reason why we didn't move away from here, because we love the trees here. We did walk the lot multiple times with Bruce, and exactly what you're talking about is those big calibers that I almost hate to call them incidental, but in my mind, it's obviously like, this is so far away. Can't we figure out a way that the machines don't come near this? We actually put question marks on those and sent them to the civil engineer. So this shouldn't be too hard to accomplish. And this is, as you said, exactly beneficial for you. It's for us as well. And something that we want. So that works.
Well, yeah. And Cam, if I say recommend that it can go to a panel, I think that would help the situation, correct?
Yes, if you wanted to push it to a panel, you could absolutely do that as well.
Yeah, that's the only request that I would have, is that if it goes to a panel that includes members that are here tonight. If we can make that
Which members?
Well, just the members that are here, just because I don't want it to all of a sudden drop on a panel. I think there's panel members of everybody that are on different panels here, but I know me, Brian, and John are on a panel.
Okay.
My
Jim.
group is all here, so we're good there.
Right. So what if it lands on Bruce's panel and there's nobody here, or it's Bruce and Jim? And so I guess there's enough. I guess we have enough diversity, so it's fine. Any panel meeting, I'm fine with that.
I would accept that change, Michael.
Sorry for that long narrative to get to that point, but so there's a motion, there was an amendment to the motion, some clarification on the motion. Any other questions, clarifications? All right. So all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any against?
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 6-1. All right, thank you, Praveen. All right.
Thank you.
2, application G.
The applicant is here. We're asking her to unmute. But actually, Lisa, you dialed in, so you would have to unmute yourself by dialing *6.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I'm here.
All right, Lisa, if you could walk us through, I believe you're back here with a planting plan and some additional structural information, I think.
That's correct.
All right, so walk us through quickly of those things, please.
You got it. Okay, received a deferred decision regarding the existing elevated deck. A decision that would confirm that the existing braces adhere to Fairfax County Code and that or alternatively to propose an alternative configuration that does not necessitate knee bracing for support. And I know that Rustin likes knee bracing for support, but provided indication from you from Longsense and the county that the deck is to code and it is braced properly. I'm not sure if you have that up in the letter from Longsense and the documentation that Fairfax County provided.
Yes, we have it up on the screen.
Okay, cool. Okay, I guess whenever, because I'm calling in, sorry, getting a little one to bed at the same time as well.
So
Okay.
did you guys get an updated plan showing the changes in the deck where you didn't have it step down?
The updated plan where there's no step down?
Yeah, remember
That
last
was
time
not
there-
written in the letter. It says a deferred decision regarding existing elevated deck until the next available full DRB meeting to provide the applicant with an opportunity.
I have the letter. What I'm saying, I know
okay.
that was something that I asked for, though, to get an updated plan so we know what was actually built out there. Was that ever done?
What is built is there minus an elevation. The numbers that you have, the measurements that you have are exacting. That was not written in the letter. I took this letter quite seriously and called people and did what was appropriate. If you need that, I can provide it to you, but I am not coming back to one of these meetings to present a measurement that shows what's already there.
All right, well.
I'm just it's
it
exactly
was
what I
something,
presented.
it was something I
in the
asked
plan.
for. I just was asking the question.
Okay.
I'm a volunteer, Lisa. I don't need attitude. So I'm just here.
I'm not trying to
asking
do
the
attitude.
question.
This just
So I
takes
just
up a
simply-
lot of my time.
I want you to show me the same respect that I show you. I just was asking a
I
question.
hear you.
Okay.
I hear you.
I
My
don't prepare the
apologies,
letters,
Michael.
so I
My
just-
apologies,
just ask.
Michael. But it's exactly there. It wasn't in the letter, so I didn't provide it.
Okay.
If you would like it, I'll provide it.
I just was
But it
wondering.
was not
I didn't
the
see
letter.
it. So that's why I was
Okay.
asking. So,
Okay.
so
So
you have
no
three-
alternative. Sorry.
Go ahead with your tree replanting plan, please.
So with regard to item B, there was a preference that I plant 1-to-1 ratio. preferably deciduous understory native trees for the 4 trees that were previously removed. There were 3 trees removed in the back, 1 on the side. The 1 on the side was dead. I had additional landscaping done on November 9th. In the back, you'll see 3 red buds at or above the 2-inch caliper. And on the side, right before the fence, if you're looking at the house to the left, and again, I can't see your screen, so if you have it, I'm sorry if I'm over-explaining. I planted a sweet bay magnolia, all deciduous understory native trees. Okay. Did you have any questions, or should I keep going?
No, you can keep going.
Okay, thanks. Okay, and then the other aspects of item B were to submit a drainage plan. So I did call a drainage and erosion company recommended to me by Maryfield Garden Center, Drainage and Erosion Solutions, and they said that eventually the height of my land could present a drainage or erosion issue, and they presented me a plan that they said did not need to be executed immediately, but years from now there could be an issue. So I submitted that plan. It includes, and I gave you even, the numbers. I gave you the whole thing. You have all of what it would require, the liner, the rocks. It would be designed, I guess, with a, I was like, not a square because that's just ugly, but, some sort of, concave and curving sort of liner or edging to keep the river stone in. You see the 1 to 3 inch river stone, you should have that. And then they would be diverting the existing drainage, which was here when I purchased the home, that goes down into the hill, out towards the proper areas where it would not affect, I guess, the land, and would be proper for the lake that's obviously at the bottom of the hill on which we live. So I presented that plan, and my goal would be to execute that drainage plan. Well, part of it is already executed because it includes the deciduous understory native trees already. We also have Pachysandra, which was already planted when we met last time, and is growing beautifully back there, by the way. Ground cover to help with erosion or potential drainage issues, but you have the full plan, which would be executed in a matter of 18 to 24 months, is what I've budgeted for. It's because Christmas is coming up and other things, and I've just spent a lot of money already. So that is the plan thus forward. I do know that there are some affected parties on the call, and I know they may bring up the fact that there are blue tags on my trees. Those blue tags are not because I'm cutting them down, okay? Those blue tags are because I get my trees inspected every at least 3 years, at the maximum 3 years. I had an inspection, and those are trees that require trimming, which they said for the safety of the people on the trail, the sidewalks, the property, etc. So no, I am not cutting down more trees.
Great, thank you. Steph, do we have some affected parties? I think we hear from them. Thank you, Lisa. We'll come back to you with any questions, okay? Well, let's hear from your affected parties, and then we'll come back to you, okay?
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, so first we have Richard. I'm asking him to unmute. Richard, just a reminder that you have 3 minutes as an affected party.
I read your mind, LaShonda. I was going to say that.
Okay, am I on now?
Yep.
Yes.
Take it away,
Okay.
Richard.
I believe this is the fourth time this has been before the DRB. After your considerable discussion, I'm still concerned with a couple of issues. There is a plan of the deck that Michael was asking for. It's part of this package, and you can probably scroll down and find it to see how big the deck is and what the dimensions are and what we believe is actually out in the field. But anyway, I'm concerned only about two issues. I'll try to be brief that I hope you guys will discuss. First is the large size of this unapproved deck, its relative height to the neighbors, and the need for screening neighboring property. Secondly, the reforesting and specific landscaping the DRB required in the October 24th decision letter for replacement trees and privacy screening. Hopefully you'll discuss further. I'm happy to be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Get a life, Richard.
I'm sorry? I didn't hear what you said.
No, I said thank you.
Oh, okay. You're welcome.
Our next is Mr. Abbott, asking Mr. Abbott to unmute.
You might want to put the
There we go.
plan of the deck up on the screen just for reference.
Oh, we don't have any comments, so nothing for us to say. Just stay tuned to what you're gonna decide. Leave it in your hands.
All right, thank you.
There are no more affected parties.
Okay. Let me go around the room, see if anyone has any questions for Lisa, and we'll go from there. Mike, do you have any questions?
I was just trying to understand the knee bracing associated with the explanation from the contractor. Looking at the code, I was trying to understand their paragraph of description there in terms of bracing and need for lateral support, but yeah, I mean, maybe you were going to get to it as well, Michael. I was just
Well, I mean, it's the county thing. It's the easy way, right? So if you want to, it's yes, what they did is technically code required and it's a code minimum. Let's put it that way.
there you go.
For moment and shear connections to a freestanding deck because it's essentially because it's connected to some of those those bay windows. There's no actual structural to the actual house. So this is how they freestand support the deck. There are other ways to do it with a little bit more structural engineering, as you may know. But this is the way the county likes to see it if you're going to follow their typical deck details, which in this instance is what they submitted to the county. So this is what they needed to show. So that's kind of, so we are where we are because of that, essentially.
Which I suppose was where we were going to land with the answer to my question. So thank you, Mr. Wood, for answering my question.
I fortunately deal with a lot of decks in Fairfax County, so.
But related to Mike's question, if you don't mind me jumping in, like the letter says there are two options for the lateral support, and we've installed both methods. So they did the diagonal knee braces, but I'm guessing they did this method 1.
Yeah, there's tension ties back into the inside joists, presumably.
Yeah,
so both required.
Yeah, well, and those you can't even see. So those are up in this floor joist. Those are needed. So actually, with a freestanding deck, you have to do 3. You have to do method 1, which is the what do they call them? The tension tie connection.
Yep.
The 2, which is the knee braces on the outside towards like the outer edge of the deck. And then method 3, which is the inside on like the side of the deck to create basically a square, fully stable deck. So this thing doesn't, could support King Kong situation. So you actually have to do all 3 when you do a freestanding deck by the county codes, which is what they did here. I think what we were worried about was the depth of the knee brace. Our our guidelines
Excuse me.
to drop no more than 2 feet below the main beam structure. And I think that was what we were asking on some clarification to make sure that these were in fact only less than 2 feet or less from the main beam structure from a drop, if that kind of makes sense. You can kind of zoom in on staff. If you zoom in on page, whatever that is, page 3, you can kind of get a little bit better idea. That was going to be my question for the homeowner, was whether this 2 foot dimension was measured and confirmed. For the detail there on the left, guys, if you kind of look at method 2 and method 3,
Yep.
brace, you can do 2 feet below the main beam, is essentially the maximum, or is the minimum that they required and the maximum we require. So essentially you have to go 2 feet. And that was, I think, was what we were kind of asking for some clarification on last week or last month, was did these knee braces meet that? Because they appeared to just drop lower than that. And according to their letter, they installed them per the code. I still think they drop a little below 2 feet from what I can see, if I'm doing some scaling, but it's close.
All right. And again, all this is born out of the fact that we're talking about a freestanding structure without attachment via ledger board or,
Correct.
et cetera.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have anything else at this point, Michael. I might, depending on where we go with the conversation, but thank you.
Okay. Sorry, John, do you have anything?
No, just verify the amount the diagonal brace comes down below the main beam.
Jim, do you have any questions?
You did raise the issue about the step down the last time, and I guess there isn't a document supporting that at this point. So, I mean, that was really the only question I had, but it sounds like that's not going to be coming anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can have staff note that, there's no elevation change in the deck, that it, I do think it would have been successful to have that. It would have helped it limit its height, but we're dealing with an existing structure, so I'm trying to be flexible, but I do think it would have been more successful at limiting the height to have that simple 8-inch step down like originally planned.
That's all I have.
Okay. Elena?
Everybody's already covered it. Thank you.
Emily?
No questions.
So one question I wanted to ask actually to Emily so I guess it's not for the customer, for the homeowner. So the red buds, I think are good choices. I personally love red buds. I think they're great understory trees. Is the Sweet Bay Magnolia, is that a good selection for kind of a screening? Is that an evergreen? Aren't magnolias evergreen, or do they lose their leaves? Are they deciduous?
The Sweet Bay Magnolia, Magnolia virginiana, is not evergreen. They're semi-evergreen in this area, which means 95% of the time they're going to lose their leaves in the winter unless we get a really warm winter. So it's not a screening tree, but she is also a great understory deciduous canopy tree, and they also help absorb stormwater. So I'm not mad at a Sweet Bay Magnolia, but it is not an evergreen. I think that the client has actually put in some arborvitaes, which we're doing a little bit of double duty because we wanted to make up for the canopy coverage. I think really the only concern is if we look at the photos and where that firewood is currently sitting on the property line. I know that is one of the affected parties, kind of their neighboring lot line is the concern. I think some, shrubbery, anything there that could soften the appearance of the foundation of the home would be great. But from a lot coverage and canopy coverage requirement, I feel like the homeowner has satisfied what we've asked them to do at this point, and put forth. The only really comment that I had is, or question is, when they decide to move forward with the drainage plan, and we can get to that, where at the end of the pop-up emitters, I would like to just make a note that those should be no closer than 10 feet to the property line, and have River Rock surrounding the pop-up emitters, which is not a detail that I saw in the drainage plan, but is something that could easily be added, and very, very minimal addendum to what we have proposed here.
Okay.
Sorry, Michael, I went on a little bit of a tangent, but
You're
did
fine.
that answer your question?
Yeah. I just wanted to ask because I saw that tree, because that was kind of where we suggested a tree could go. And so I just wanted to see.
Which I believe the sweet bay is in more of the front yard, looking at the plan. That's outside of the fence line. Yeah, there's that where that firewood is, and the photo that we're looking at right now is kind of the area of nakedness that is still remaining.
Next to that big, whatever that is, big oak that's on the other side of the fence.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So since we have no other questions for her, do anyone have any thoughts, comments, motions?
My only other thought or comment is just an idea to help assuage some of the concerns about the appearance of the underside of this deck and kind of the structure. The client has elected to do a black aluminum, like kind of this black and white and blue, a little bit more modern detailing on the deck. And I think that we had talked about in the previous meeting about the idea of painting the deck posts. And one thought to sort of make them disappear a whole lot more would be to paint those deck posts black. It's a detail that we've seen done, or you can do a black stain rather. And that would make a lot of that kind of pressure treated wood look kind of disappear into the area that we have. It is just a suggestion, and I think it might help everybody's concerns. I've seen it done before to great success, and it would blend in very well with the character that the homeowner is kind of going for at the moment. But other than that, and making sure that we when we go through with that drainage plan, that we kind of adhere to some guidelines, I think that that's just my only thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the existing deck or screen porch deck, whatever you want to call it, has a stain on it already. I don't want to introduce a new stain unless they're going to all match, I guess would be my,
I believe that the homeowner mentioned that railing and all of that portion of the deck were also going to be replaced.
Go to black as well to match the new railing.
I do believe so. Is the homeowner still on?
Yes, she's still on. We'll unmute her.
Okay.
Lisa, are you still here?
I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Are you replacing that railing on the screen porch to match the black? Is that your plan?
Exactly. So the as we talked about last time, the railing on the screened-in porch, as well as the screen and the fascia board, will be replaced to match the current deck. That is going to start on November 20th.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll bring it all together to make it look cohesive. So
thank you, Lisa.
So Emily, going back to your point, if that's going to go white and then the bottom, I hesitate with black because it can work, it cannot work. The brand new timbers are green, right? And they're going to slowly weather in gray and look a little bit, they're going to start to blend in a little better. I don't know. I hesitate with black, but you know, I do think it would work with this aesthetic of this home with just the overall other design elements, but I'm hesitant on it, to be honest with you. But that's just my opinion. And it's obviously not part of this application. It would just be for discussion anyway. So
I think it's a really good point that they're just to unify what's going on back there. There's a lot of different finishes there now. So I think that the point is really well taken though. I wonder if on the flip side could the stain like be removed, refinished in such a way to more closely match the new posts? Because I actually like the untreated look of the new under the deck, the new deck.
yeah, I don't know, because to me it'll kind of blend. Eventually, it'll be kind of like the fences, right? Eventually, it'll blend in with kind of that graying, natural wooded look, which is what we usually like. So, I think I don't think once something's stained though, I don't know if you'd be hard pressed to get that.
It won't come out.
Won't come out.
It's penetrating stain. It's not a surface.
So
you'd have to take off too much wood.
Yeah.
So and like I said, once again, I guess it technically is part of this application, theoretically, because we're looking at the cohesiveness of the project. So, well, it goes back to my question. Anyone have a motion, a thought, any other further questions, comments?
I would make a motion to approve the project as submitted, with the suggestion that the homeowner evaluate opportunities for continuity between the deck elements, or however you want to phrase that. It's not
I wouldn't say maybe. Well, and I would like to make a comment on your motion.
Please do, sir.
I would just say that I think because she's already planning on doing it anyway, that we would require that the existing railing and fascia board on the
be updated
porch to be updated to match the deck design. And that the under the support structure of both the deck and the screen porch to be uniform. Because I don't think, and then stopping, period. My point, I don't think if she went to the stain of the brown that they have now on all the rest of the green timber now, I think that would also go cohesively nicely. It would still look, I think it would look appropriate. I don't.
I'm with you there, Michael. I really am just aiming for.
Yeah, I don't think it would be a detrimental design decision. I think it would still complement well.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think continuity is the key here. So I was literally fumbling through trying to word that somewhat.
I would more require continuity rather than suggest them contemplate it.
Suggest strongly. Yeah, fair enough. Well.
So I would amend your motion to require continuity between the deck structure. So,
all right. So LaShonda, that was a rambled two-man motion, but I said all those things.
Okay. Is there a time frame that you will be adding?
Let me say one thing. Pressure treated wood takes a while to, I'll say, cure or air out and stuff before you can stain it.
Usually
a season.
And so I think
they want you to wait, like at least usually close to a year. I mean, depending on the time of year you install it, but it's a while. So I'm fine with a timeline of a year.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose since I was the one who started the motion, I will state a year to come into conformance with that goal of continuity.
And Mike, if I might add on to your motion.
Yeah, we're gonna teamwork this thing right out the door.
Just that I would love to see a detail for the edging of the river rock, because that is something that wasn't highlighted, and to specify that the pop-up emitters be located no closer than 10 feet to the property line, with at least a 1 foot diameter of the 1 to 3 inch river rock around them to help prevent stormwater erosion.
I would accept that amendment. Mr. Wood?
I also, well, I didn't second the motion yet.
That's true. I
just-
apologize.
Yeah, I don't have to
He's my
accept.
co-author.
Yeah, Emily can say whatever she wants.
Then I will accept the amendment and then shut up. How's that?
Yeah. So, and the only other thing that I would like to be in the motion, and sorry, LaShonda, for adding paragraph to this, but I would like an updated deck plan showing the actual design with confirmed field dimensions of what was, and it's really just the elevation change is really the main difference. It shouldn't be hard. We are racing a line to show that it's one consistent elevation across, and confirming that the knee braces go no more than 2 feet underneath of the main support beam. In some pictures, they look fine. In other pictures, they look like they slightly go below that. So, you know, I just would want to verify that. I understand we're following Fairfax County details. I understand that sometimes, though, the framers may just accidentally go to 2'4", and 4 inches may not seem like a lot, but it does make a difference in the overall aesthetic of the deck. So that would be my only other clarification, is that, and that just needs to be submitted to staff with a verification of the plan and the 2 foot knee brace maximum depth from the bottom of the beam, just verifying that those in fact are installed correctly.
I would agree for the addition of that stipulation.
All right, then I will second the motion. So there's a first and a second, motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 7-0. All right, thank you, Lisa. All right, moving on to application H, which is the Shores Cluster.
We are asking Robert to unmute. Okay. Robert, you're unmuted.
Robert or Rick?
Give me one moment. Sorry.
Rick, you can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. To kick this off, I'm just going to read a statement. It's about a page and a half. Okay. The Shores Cluster HOA Board has applied to replace 2 mature trees, a red maple and a sweet gum, both of which are causing property damage. To respect your time, I will, for the most part, limit my comments to the substantive issues and leave aside most questions of process, and will not spend time correcting any mischaracterizations in the filings of the affected parties. I am happy to answer questions regarding both. I will also focus primarily on the replacement of the red maple, the more controversial request. Reston is a community of busy and engaged people. The residents value a well-ordered and planned environment. The residential communities within Reston include homes, convenient adjacent parking, and landscaped and wooded areas. All of these are valued features, and while trees are valued in this environment, they are but one of the important elements of our neighborhoods. The maintenance of communities involves trade-offs between these features. An interested party has compared the red maple to the 600-year-old tree recently cut down in England and to the responsibility of caring for a pet and its attendant mess. The red maple we seek to replace is neither an historic tree nor a sentient being. Let's not make this tree a totem. The truth is, developers made some poor choices in tree selection and placements in many of our communities. Red maples and sweet gums were selected for their rapid growth and dazzling fall foliage, which helped in the original sale of townhomes. The tree's invasive roots, and in the case of sweet gums, hazarded gumballs, were given little consideration. Our community and others have been transitioning away from these species with the death of each tree. The Shores Board initially discussed and came to a consensus to replace the red maple and sweet gum trees at our August meeting. We postponed a vote to the following meeting in October, as it is the board's practice to not vote on non-routine matters and expenditures when they are first proposed. This delay gave me an opportunity to talk to the residents of the 10 households, 2 blocks of 5 households most impacted by the proposed tree replacements. 4 of the 5 owners in the block of homes behind the red maple tree want the tree replaced. These are the households that benefit most: privacy, aesthetic enhancement, property values, etc., and bear most of the burden of the trees. The October meeting was held with the full knowledge of the community that tree replacement was on the agenda and to be voted on. Few community members attended, and none in attendance raised any objections. The concerns sent by email of one resident household who was unable to attend were considered. Board members present unanimously approved the replacement of the trees. The handful of residents who object to the board's plans elected to use the DRB process to register their objections. By and large, the rest of the community understands that these trees present the community with a dilemma. The aesthetic value of the tree is obvious, but the downside of the tree grows with its size, and the burden is not shared equally. There is no denying that the trees we seek to replace are doing property damage and potentially endanger people and property. I don't know that photographs do justice to the damage being caused. Depth and scale are not easily captured in photographs, so know that the largest of the several roots lifting the asphalt winds 22 feet, the vast majority of which has an open crack, and some of this crack is the entire depth of the asphalt. The lift is up to 5 inches. We are not talking about cosmetic damage. The red maple also has many branches 4 to 5 inches in diameter that extend lengthy distances perpendicular to the trunk. I don't know that we have a liability with respect to the branches falling, only because there is no way to predict when they may fall. But the girth, length, and angle of attachment strongly suggests some will split and fall. The Shores investigated the timing of road and tree replacement to determine the most fiscally responsible approach to repair and maintain the road and parking areas. We consulted with paving companies and arborists. We determined that the building and paving should occur within the next 2.5 years. The red maple tree and the sweet gum tree should be replaced this fall. The arborist recommendation was simple. The 2 trees are causing property damage and must be replaced. His recommendation was driven by the fact that the damage was only going to continue into the future. The tree has outgrown its pod, its location, and creates a stream of substantial additional expenses over the next road replacement cycle and beyond. Let me close by saying we meet 4 DRB criteria for tree replacement: damage to property; second, potential endangerment of people and property; 3, trees are too large for the space; and 4, invasive roots and hazardous litter. The board has come to its conclusion in a well-considered manner. This is not an irresponsible request. As the elected and accountable body of the Shores cluster community. The board is the appropriate body to weigh and determine the financial implications and preferences within the community with respect to tree replacement. We respectfully request approval of our applications. We are initially proposing replacement of the trees with disease-resistant Coastside dogwood trees, but we are flexible and open to other suggestions from the DRB and residents. Thank you.
Yeah. Could you, just one question before we hear from the
Sure,
affected
sure.
party. Staff, could you clarify which, I just want to wrap my head around which tree is which, because I was looking at the pictures and I cannot for the life of me distinguish the difference. So if you go to slide 22, like what are these slides? I don't get what are we seeing on the hillside here? Like these have nothing to do with
These are not related. I don't know why you're seeing these
All right.
slides.
That's actually a part of the affected party statement.
okay.
And
Okay,
so
so
if you
this
go to
is-
page 55, that'll
This is
show.
the red maple.
This is the red maple, and then which one is the sweet gum?
Yeah,
Slide 54.
Okay, so I kept
these
getting.
are all red maple.
I kept
That
getting-
is this is the sweet gum here.
Okay, all
It's
right.
the yellow tree there.
Okay, sorry. I just needed some clarification so I could look at it. Thank you. I'm
No,
gonna hear.
that's fine.
We'll hear from the affected party now, and then we'll come back and ask you any questions. Okay, Rick?
Sure.
Staff, we have a affected party, one, two, couple. So just reminder as affected party, you have 3 minutes to state your case. And staff is controlling that time. So staff, take it away.
Okay, first we have Joy. You have been unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate everybody's time. I also feel a little bit encouraged with the discussion on the importance of preserving trees. And the red maple is an absolutely stunning tree, but I will also concur if I were the property owner who was asked to park in the space next to it, I would not be happy. I've lived in the community since 2007. I've served on the board for, approximately 10 years cumulatively. Many residents are choosing not to attend and support this board for reasons that are not relevant right now, but it's a choice based on, again, a history that's unfortunate because there's a lot of divisiveness. I would like to say 2 years ago, as a board member, this area was evaluated and it was suggested by the board that there be repair work done on the asphalt. Nothing has been done. 10 years, no asphalt work has been done. Regarding the curbs and the sidewalk, it has been 8 years since there's been any maintenance work. It was recommended 2 years ago that all of the trees on the approximate 10 islands have dead branches removed, so we don't have any branches falling on cars, which it's regular, it happens. And we have live branches occasionally that come down. What's different about our community from others in Reston is we have 25 extra car spaces, 25. And 2 of those guest spots are really close to where this tree, the red maple, the one causing the parking damage, very close to that homeowner. So my suggestion creatively would say, just reassign those parking spaces. And when it comes time to redo the asphalt, then let's make bigger space for the red maple because it's possible, it is doable. Regarding the sweet gum, again, there is negligible damage there. So I would appeal to the DRB. Let's maintain our healthy trees. Let's be creative and ask for solutions which preserve natural resources that take decades to restore themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Next we have Carla. I was not able to identify her. So Carla, if you are present, could you please raise your hand? Next we have Paul. Paul, if you are present, could you please raise your hand? Okay. Next, we have David. David, if you are present, could you please raise your hand?
I don't know that you have the right list of names.
I have the list of names that submitted affected parties for this application.
Okay, because there is a Brian and there is a Maggie and David. So maybe you're referring to Maggie and David.
Not a Maggie and David. The next person on my list is Jennifer and Brian, and they are present. But I don't actually have an affected party statement from, give me 1 second. Okay, maybe Maggie and David Booth are together. Okay, 2 last names. Okay, let me unmute Maggie. Maggie?
Hello, this is David, but we're both sitting right here. We wrote a statement and we're kind of happy to rest on that statement, but it pretty much says our position. But the main thing is, it's a really big decision to remove 2, old trees that are well established and seemingly healthy. And we don't think that the board presented enough information to substantiate the idea that they're a danger to life and property. So we'd prefer them to be not removed at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then next we have Brian, asking Brian to unmute.
Hey, good evening, friends. My name is Brian Palmero. I live at 2080, which is directly in front of the red maple in question. My partner and I also submitted a statement, which I think is on the screen now, but we are affected significantly by damage that red maple is causing to the sidewalk, gutter, curb, and our parking spaces themselves. I respectfully disagree with my neighbor's assessment that we can simply move our parking places. Although I do think that's a creative solution, that's not a solution that we're going to support whatsoever. And we're going to appear today in support of the board's decision and advocate for the removal of both the trees in front of 2080 and 2090 Lake Audubon Court, as our belief is that both present an unmitigated hazard and an unmitigated liability at this time to the community. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Yep. That is all of the affected parties that we have, but we do have an interested party. Clifford. We're asking Clifford to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you, everybody. And I just want to say at the outset that I hope this doesn't become a source of antagonism within our community. I love all my neighbors. I will continue to love them no matter what the outcome of this is. So I just want to share my perspective, honestly, about it. I was driving down. I have 3 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I was driving down Lawyers Road today, and the entire stretch is covered with a canopy of trees. So I think it's generally the view in Reston that having tree cover and branches coming over the road or over a parking lot is considered normal and not a hazard. The solution that is normally accepted here is you trim the dead branches. Having tree cover itself is not generally viewed as a problem. I took pictures of the area surrounding that tree, the 34-inch red maple, which is really the one that is the beautiful, magnificent, healthy tree. And there are 4 sides. Yes, thank you. There are 4 sides to that. There is one side, which is where Brian, who is here, his car is parked in this picture. By the way, there are 2 parties here who both are directly in front of that tree. So they're both represented here, Rick and Brian. And as Joy said, there are probably concerns legitimately that branches might fall. That's what happens sometimes. But anyway, in terms of the surfaces, On 3 sides, there is absolutely no damage at all. None to the sidewalk or the curb or anything. There's no damage at all on 3 sides. The side that has damage, as Rick described accurately, is the tarmac surface where the car is parked. And there it's risen up and buckled. And as Joy explains, that hasn't been resurfaced. So that's really the spot in question. The homeowner who lives next to that house, her name is Rocio, I forget her last name, but it's buckled for her too, but she supports keeping the tree. It's a magnificent, healthy tree. To say it's outgrown the pod, there's one little section of root that is slightly over where the curb is. To say it's overgrown the pod seems like an exaggeration to me, but I don't know, that's subjective. So anyway, I would just like to go on record saying, I don't see a good reason to remove this healthy tree. I would rather have someone look at what could be done to the surface, as Michael had mentioned, a tree preservation plan to see if the surface could be fixed so that we could get at least another 10 years, who knows, maybe another 100 years out of that tree. It's a magnificent tree. It's been here since a long time. It could probably be here a long time still. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, no matter how this turns out.
Thank you. That's all of the affected parties and interested parties.
All right, great. Thank you, LaShonda. All right, let me go around the room, see if anyone has any questions for Rick, and then we will have some discussion. So, Mike B.
I don't have any questions. I live in this cluster. I'm very aware of the 2 trees. So,
okay.
Thank you, sir.
Brian?
I guess we focused a lot on the red maple, but not necessarily on the sweet gum. And maybe I missed it. I'm unclear on what damage the sweet gum is causing. I don't know if they can elaborate on that. We focused so much on the pictures, kind of focus on the red maple.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the sidewalks are lifting on the sweet gum, okay, and the parking lot to the left of what you're viewing here also has buckling, okay. So those are the ones that obviously conform to the regular guidelines of Reston to justify tree removal. Okay, so there you see it there. And then, but there's a primary hazard in that it drops thousands of these gumballs. And as you see over here, there's stairs there, okay? And then often the gumballs get covered with leaves. We have a 70-year-old couple who lives just right around the corner there. There was a child there and the previous owner who fell. We had I believe there was a prior sweet gum that was removed in the neighborhood when a 90-year-old woman fell. So we consider that to be a more immediate hazard. Anyway, so that's where that tree stands. If I may, I would like an opportunity to talk about the movement of suggesting that we just move the parking at some point, but it doesn't have to be now.
Let's see if anyone has any questions on it, and then we'll get there if we need to. Okay. Brian, any other questions?
No more questions. No.
John, any questions?
None. Thank you.
Jim, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Elena, do you have any questions?
Is Emily still? There she is. No. Is Emily here still?
No, Emily is gone for the evening.
So no Emily anymore. Okay. All right. So that means just me left.
I was going to ask Emily a question, but okay.
Well,
No,
go ahead,
I don't
Erin.
have any. I don't have any. I mean, it just seems to me that, and I don't know, I'm not a landscape architect with the knowledge she has, but it seems to me that that red maple is getting really root bound in its location. And I just wanted to ask her about that situation.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
No, thank you.
I don't have any questions. I guess the only question I would ask for the applicant is, there was affected parties had claimed that a lot of these trees have not been trimmed. I mean, every tree needs a haircut, especially these big ones. I mean, when is the last time that an official tree trimming has been done on the two subject trees?
We've only been in office for the last year and a half. It has not been done in the last year and a half.
Okay.
I did not specifically address. There were a lot of objections that were put forward in the file, and I didn't want to waste your time by going through everything. But now that we've kind of seen what the main objections are, I would like the opportunity to rebut some of those comments.
Well, yeah, I guess this is my follow-up question is, and maybe I missed it, but have you guys had any, the only arborist statement that I saw was from a affected party, from what I believe. Have you guys gotten an actual arborist to look at?
No, we sent in a statement last Thursday.
It's on page.
We had difficulty getting the statement. His wife is a major illness.
What page is it on, staff?
46.
And I quoted him. He bluntly stated that the trees should be removed.
Oh, it's this ticket? Wait.
It's the third line. These trees are causing damage.
Okay. That's the only statement he made.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's my question.
So may I speak? I don't want to be.
Yeah, I mean, what's tricky is we don't normally want full rebuttals unless we ask for the statement, It's just, it can get very long-winded on clustered topics that necessarily aren't our purview. Our purview is looking at the tree removal that you've prevented, before us, and whether it's appropriate or not, right? So that's ultimately, what we're looking at. And just to clarify, some of our guidelines, about tree removals, you are correct in some of the things you mentioned. However, it's not, if every tree was able to, you could prove any tree could do one of these reasons for removal, right? Any tree could damage property. Any tree could, have slightly invasive roots or hazardous litter for an area, but it's whether it is creating a detrimental impact for, that area specifically. It just gets tricky because it obviously is a judgmental thing. So usually we like to, usually what I like to do is trust arborists, who are professionals in this matter. Your arborist statement versus the conflicting arborist statement that says these trees just need to be trimmed, and taken a little bit better care of. It's 1 versus 1, right? So it's a tricky. We're in a little bit of a pickle because of that.
Well, they limit it to the branches. There is the problem with the asphalt. And
yeah, but I could argue and say, well, why don't we just get rid of the asphalt?
Well, I think the rest indeed, people expect to have asphalt, and they expect to have access to their homes.
But if we took out all the trees that affect asphalt in Reston, we wouldn't have any trees. So I think.
Well, no, I understand that. I appreciate that.
Every trail in Reston is asphalt that we manage, and probably over 25% of those are damaged by tree roots at some point. That doesn't mean we take the tree out, right?
Right.
So,
but there was a claim with respect to a remedy that we could just simply park across the way, and we could allow the tree more room, and that's just simply not the case. And I wanted an opportunity to point out.
Gotcha. Okay.
I need to make a point, Mike, when you get.
Elena, go ahead.
Aren't you in an environmental protection area?
It's on the other side of the houses. We're in the RPA, but it's not, it doesn't affect the parking.
The RPA doesn't go to the other side of your houses because it
We
takes,
have a
I'm
very-
in
we
the
have-
cluster.
It's
I'm
100, it's 100 feet, and we have a very long stretch. We're not that close to the water. Mike Bianchino's, if he's here, he could confirm that for you.
Mike?
So it actually runs, it's basically abuts the back of my property line, and
Okay.
so Rick's generalization about it being on the backside of the hill, you know, our row, the lake side of the row, that's a good general flavor of where the RPA line is.
Okay.
It's oddly drawn, but it's on the other side.
Okay. Is Fairfax County, are we sure it's 100 feet? It's much larger because it encompasses my whole cluster. I'm right across the lake from you guys.
You're in Mallard Landing?
Yeah, I'm in Mallard's Landing, and the
Well, you're right.
entire cluster is
Yeah,
in
you're
the
right on
RPA.
you're right on the water, those front houses.
Yeah, but 100 feet wouldn't include my whole cluster.
Well, that's what our understanding is.
So I guess I'll open up the question and say, from a parking standpoint, you know, it's claiming that you guys have 25 extra spaces. Is that accurate? And would there be, you know, like I said, I personally think tree roots affecting asphalt is very common. It happens all the time. So,
So we do have 25 spots, but 19 of them are on the far end of our development. They're about 400 feet away from us. Okay. There are 2 spots that are kind of across the road and over to the side. And if it were just a matter of parking there for 2 people, it wouldn't really be much of an issue, except there are a couple of things to take into account. One is the plan is to put in EV chargers. And right now, the parking spots are well aligned with the houses, with the townhomes. So for instance, in my own case, in my neighbor's case, we can just run the wiring from our house straight to the road. We would no longer be able to do that, okay? And others would not be able to do that as well. And then we would get into the business that we would have to we'd have to lay these cables under the roads, okay, for quite a distance. And that would represent
the real nut comes out now.
So, well, I think it's a valid concern because we're also interested in a green environment. So that's a substantial
Electric chargers, yes, the real truth.
And then we also have the issue that, you know, when do you replace the road? If it was simply a matter of repairing the road each time we did a road replacement every 15 to 20 years, I would say go ahead and leave the tree. And we would do that we would absorb that extra expense on a routine basis. Unfortunately, the cycles are getting smaller we've had this root damage before, and it had to be repaired in 2008. By the time I moved in 2019, there was already a substantial damage. So I think what's going to happen with the next road replacement is we're going to be looking at 5 to 10 more years, and we're going to need to do another we're going to need to do a paving repair. And when you do these off cycle, there's a lot of setup costs and it becomes very expensive. So for example, the inquiry was made a couple of years ago with respect to putting in a speed bump, and the cost was $5,000. It's for a rather simple paving job. So we're going to be in the position of either having damaged road and asking people to defer for long periods of time and live with it, or we're going to have really expenses that are outsized. The cost of removing the tree is about $3,000, not counting grinding out the stump. But if we pare back the branches, we're probably out at least $1,500 just from the start. And there was a suggestion that we might put in cables to support the branches. So we've got a number of things going on here. And so that's where the problem lies. So I think the board has probably been making the right decision up to this point of just waiting for the paving cycles to occur and repairing the road. But we've now reached a new stage in that process. And I would also point out that there is damage all around the red maple, and it pertains to the lifting of the curbstone. Okay, so the box is full that the tree exists, but of course, underlying all of this is what is the standard that one is to apply, and people fairly have different standards.
Okay.
So thank you for letting me get that in.
Yep. Well, let me go around. I'm gonna have some discussion with the fellow board members, and then we'll take a vote. Okay. Brian, did you want to, or Brian, John, Jim, anybody have Elena, any other thoughts, comments, motions?
My thought was, given that we've kind of got these competing sides and competing arborist statements saying two different things, I think because of that, and because of kind of the seemingly strong opposition we're getting, I think that we should not. I think we should motion to deny the application to remove the trees entirely and encourage the cluster to do the sort of like not routine maintenance, but maintenance on the sidewalk and the pruning of the trees that are potentially causing damage to cars and things like that first, as a first step before the more severe action of cutting them down entirely. That's my thought.
Is that a motion?
No, sorry, I didn't mean to throw that in there. I do want to encourage discussion. That's just my opinion at this point.
Okay.
Unless there is no further discussion.
Jim, do you want to add anything?
I would agree that I think that they should try to save the trees, move the asphalt, remove the damaged limbs. I mean, from the pictures, they look like beautiful, healthy trees. And as trees grow, they need room to grow.
Do you want to make a motion? Elena, do you have any thoughts?
I was just wondering if Mike B was willing to share his thoughts, or is he abstaining? Because I live in a cluster that has a lot of mature trees that weren't properly planted. I don't know why you would plant a red maple and a parking island in a townhouse cluster, unless you wanted to have this problem 20 or 30 years from now. I have dealt with similar cluster situations where a problem that impacts a few, other people want to not be bothered. They don't want any change. So, a suggestion that the homeowners that have spaces right outside their door now move their cars, it would mean something to me if for instance, if I said, I'll move my car, it's the one right there. But, suggesting that other people be more inconvenienced doesn't sway me a lot. So, I mean, we can kick the can down the road, but eventually those trees are going to get too big for where they're planted. because you can already see the root heaving on the red maple in its confined area. But you know, that's
Yeah, it's just tricky though, because like I could go through 90% of the clusters in Reston and say, you know, I could go to every cluster and probably pick out 3, 4, 5 trees that are doing this and say we have to remove those because they're causing damage to the asphalt or the sidewalk. I mean, most clusters will grind their sidewalks if they're getting uplifted. They'll grind the curb cuts if that's curb and gutter if that's necessary as well. They kind of just let the asphalt happen. You know, I just don't want to set, you know, I agree. Maybe a red maple wasn't the right choice, but it's here and it's been there for now 40 years. Does that really mean we say, let's take it out? Is really kind of the
I personally wouldn't want to be walking under it when one of the branches fell on a sidewalk. Like, you know, I think they do present hazards, and
but you could say that for any trail in Reston, Elena. I mean,
yeah, you're right.
There's 100-foot tall
also
trees that branches fall and they could kill you at any moment. But I mean,
you also see Reston trimming them back, and the pathways are not overgrown with trees, but those trees are branching over sidewalks and over parking spaces. And you can't trim them back because they're too big to do that. Otherwise they become, you know, just a trunk. So I guess I have a different perspective because we have in fact gone to Fairfax County and have had tree removals approved in the resource protection area by Fairfax County because of the very reasons that this cluster is bringing up. We've had trees that have decided to remove themselves before we could get approval to remove them. They just fell. You know, I don't know that I don't think that's a case with this red maple or the sweet gum, but I have to say that, you know, just because it's a tree doesn't mean it's in the right place, and that you can still protect the tree cover and the canopy cover in Reston that we all enjoy and we all appreciate, but allow some flexibility and some common sense for protecting other people's property and life and limb.
But yeah, Eileen, I think that's absolutely true. And I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent, but I think that we've jumped to like the most severe conclusion here, where it sounds like a lot of the maintenance to the trees and to the sidewalks and to the whatevers have not been done over time. And I think that, you know, this is a very full tree. So I think we would, even if they cut back some of the branches falling over the sidewalks or affecting the like neighboring houses, things like that, there's still a lot left to this tree. So I guess that's where my perspective is coming in, is like, could we do some of those incremental steps first before
we
jump to?
And that's where I'm trusting, you know, I'm looking at the arborist statement that was submitted that's much more lengthy than just saying that these trees are a hazard. And basically it's recommending general maintenance for the tree and for it to be monitored. And maybe in 3 years, the tree needs to be taken down. But I think until you actually take care of something, you don't know what it's going to turn into after you maintain it for a little bit. So that would be my, you know, and I think I'm just going to make a motion and see where it goes, but I'm going to make a motion to deny the application and to recommend that the trees be maintained via the arborist statement submitted by the affected party, and that the board can come back for a removal if in fact that doesn't work in the future. But for right now, I think that's the first step before we go to the extreme, because the tree's not coming back if we cut it down. So that's my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
And Michael, just one quick comment. I'm sure that the cluster would not, but can we specify avoiding any tree topping.
Avoiding any tree topping from trimming, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what legal would have to say about that, but I don't know if we've ever done that before. I mean, would we just put in the motion that you have to trim it according to arborist recommendations?
Correct.
Yeah, so I'll amend my motion to include trimming the existing trees per arborist recommendations for healthy tree survival. Jim, do you second that? Do you accept that? All right, so let's take a vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any against?
Nay.
Any abstentions?
Mike B abstains.
All right, motion passes 4-1-1. Thank you. All right, moving on to Hook Road development. Is Chris here?
Yes, Chris is here.
Good evening.
Hey, Chris, welcome. Welcome back. Take it away and walk us through what we're doing here for Hook Road.
Sure. So this is kind of a project a long way coming. I think back in 2018 was when the original Hook Road Working Group was established to develop this conceptual master plan for this area. And we are now finally at a point to obtain at least approval on one portion of the site and conceptual approval on the other half of the site. So the site plan has been approved by Fairfax County, so we have now cleared that hurdle, which was quite a process in itself. So the plan for the project is to execute it in two phases. Phase one is the western side of the site that involves the baseball fields. A big element of the working group was to improve safety on the site. One aspect of doing so would be to move the ball fields inward on each other to push them further away from the roadway. Right now, the bleacher areas for players are mere feet from the curb of that roadway right now on Fairway Drive. So by taking the two fields and sort of pushing them inward on each other, we'll move them away. We'll install some additional player containment areas and some foul line fencing to kind of keep errant balls or throws from going into the roadway, and also try to keep the players more contained, closer inward towards the field, and give spectators a little more room, and also move them further away from the road as well. Being that these are Little League fields, they rarely ever get the ball outside of the infield area. So there isn't any real concern on moving them inward on each other and any overlap in the outfield areas. Another element of the working group's desires was to improve connectivity throughout the site. So as part of the application, we have some connecting pathways that connect the two ball fields together, because right now there isn't any kind of connecting route within the actual site. You have to actually cross the street and go around the exterior perimeter. And so that connects the two ball fields to each other. And then as part of phase two, we would also have further connecting trails that would then link the western side to the eastern side of the site that is kind of bifurcated by a wood line. So that's the phase one elements, is doing the two fields, bleachers, backstops, foul line fencing, those sorts of things. And then a concrete sidewalk that kind of connects the two sites or two fields along that southern perimeter. And then on the phase two, which is for conceptual only, there's a couple of different elements going on over there. The biggest is the installation of a permanent bathroom pavilion combination. Right now, the site is only served by a single portable bathroom. So this was another key element of the working group's desire, was to install some type of permanent bathroom facilities here, as well as perhaps some covered, congregation space. Because right now, a lot of our camps programs have nowhere to really run if there's a thunderstorm that rolls through the site. So this provide at least a kind of a covered, sheltered area for them to escape to in that event. But being that this is a very expensive element to install, it requires further engineering as well for building permits. So at this stage, we're only looking for conceptual approval of the installation of such a structure. We provided an example here, which is a kind of a custom prefabbed installation. There's some, I can provide some additional kind of conceptual images of what one may look like, but you can here at least kind of see the general dimensions and layout of what it would look like. And the position of this pavilion was also a key point that was discussed by the working group on where they wanted it, how they wanted it facing. There was concerns and discussions on how to maintain security. So we've, included putting in timer locking systems, which is a similar system we've used at other such type bathrooms facilities, such as at Lake Newport Tennis and Lake Ann Pavilion. It would have 2 unisex bathrooms, which would help, provide additional bathrooms on the site, as well as some storage areas, which is always needed for a lot of our programming on the site. And then, as I mentioned, the covered area for picnic tables. Another element on the phase 2 would be the replacement of the tennis court spectating areas. Right now, there are 2 very rudimentary timber bleacher areas that are right off of Fairway Drive sidewalk. So these aren't, really accessible by most. They're not very comfortable to sit on, to say the least. So we'd be replacing those with more of an accessible option. So it actually has a landing area that kind of gets you off of the sidewalk. So if you were in a wheelchair, you could sit and spectate from there without, interfering with pedestrian traffic, and then actually have a set of stairs that then lead you to seating areas versus right now, which there isn't any method other than just jumping down sets of, timbers that are several feet high. On this image, you can see some of the details of what that spectator area would look like. And then below that are some of the specifications and details of the ball field fencing and backstops. Also, as part of phase 2, there's some additional connecting trails, including a small footbridge that bridges over a drainage culvert. So it's going to be the same type of timber bridge design we use on all of our other pathways. It's a wheeler type construction. But again, that's an element that needs to go through further design engineering and budget approvals by the board before we move forward with that, but would be requested to have that approved in concept. I think that generally covers the high level scope of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chris. Could you go over a couple of the trees that are being removed and the reasoning behind? I think a couple of them, it looks like because of the path, but then there's a couple at the over kind of by the basketball court, or there's one over by the basketball court that I had a question about.
Yes. So as part of the site plan review process, went through a very thorough discussion with the urban forester. And so several of the trees on site are in pretty poor health, and they were deemed by the urban forester and our landscape architects at Kimley Horn that they would need to be removed because of their current health and proximity to other elements on the site. There's several other trees on the site that are a little bit concerning as to their health. We've already had several of them fall down. We actually had a couple of them fall down mid-design of the site. We are doing whatever we can to preserve the trees. A lot of the sidewalks, you'll see notations in there about a critical root zone design for the pathways. So that's a detail that I can provide you. It wasn't unfortunately included in the full set that I had on there, but it shows what we're going to do to try to ease or eliminate any impacts to the critical root zones of the trees. But some of the trees that you did see notated on there were recommendations and then later requirements from the urban forester to be included as part of the site plan approval.
Okay. Let me go around the room, see if anyone else has any other questions for you, and then we'll have some discussion. Mike B, you have any questions?
Where were the structures going? And you could have just flipped off it before I
think it's just phase 2, right?
Just phase 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I will hush. Then thank you very much. I have no other questions. Thank you, sir.
Brian.
My only question was exactly what you asked, Michael, and so I just want to reiterate. I was curious about tree 48 and 64. And by the way, thank you for labeling the trees, numbering the trees, by the way. 48 is down along Hook Road below the basketball. Oh, yeah, right here. So 48 and 64 just because they're in poor health, not because they're like in the way of any work.
Correct. Yeah, there isn't any actually work occurring in that corner of the site.
And same for 64, which is up on the opposite side up by Fairway, above where the pavilion and path's going to go. Same thing there.
Yes.
Just poor health. Okay. All right. Thank you.
John?
Well, my grandsons have played baseball at this place, and I think it looks great. So, no questions.
Okay. Jim?
Where are the phase 2 facilities going to be?
So they're all on the western side of the site. So the bathroom pavilion's kind of right there at the corner of the tennis courts. I would call that the southwest corner of the tennis courts. And then the footbridge is just northwest of that feature as well. Kind of in that darker shaded part of the pathway right there. Just kind of in between the hitting wall and the courts there is where the bridge would go. And then the tennis court viewing areas are north of the tennis courts, directly along the sidewalk on Fairway Drive.
Right. Okay.
There's 2 of them.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Staff, before I move on, was there any affected parties or interested parties on this site? On my agenda, I didn't have any, but I see somebody raising their hand.
No, we didn't have any interested parties or affected parties that signed up.
I believe Ryan Korn has his hands up if you would like to.
Yeah, I can acknowledge him. Could you guys unmute him real quick?
Ryan, you're unmuted.
Hey, Ryan, are you an affected party or you just interested party or?
No, just interested. I'm excited about all of this happening. I live across the street on the Fairway side. So I wanted to find out about the traffic calming plans, if there are any on Fairway Drive. I know there's an effort going on with some of my neighbors on the eastern side, working with VDOT to put in, or to vote at least on traffic calming measures on the eastern side. When I wanted to find out what was happening on the western side, I was told that it would have to go through this effort. And so I just wanted to see if that had been planned as well, just because it hadn't been mentioned on this discussion. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll ask Chris about it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Chris, was there any sort of, I know the roads are kind of VDOT's purview, not Reston. So, but was there any sort of traffic study done a part of the working group?
There was some discussion regarding traffic safety. That was a key element, in fact, of desires to do so. Earlier on in the site plan process, we did actually have a few suggested traffic calming measures to be done. However, the process of getting that through is very extensive. The group that's working with the RTAP program on the side, that Ryan mentioned, they're still going through that process. They've been going through it for a while. We'd have to go through a similar process to do any kind of traffic calming on this section of Fairway Drive. It is something we would like to pursue looking at a later time. But the priority right now is to address some of these safety concerns on the ball fields and the connectivity elements. I have been approached recently by some individuals along Fairway Drive that would like to also commit to the same kind of RTAP program for the western side of Fairway Drive. That is something that, with direction from our board of directors, we can look into also, working with them to do that process. It's with Fairfax County that again goes through VDOT. But it's at least a year process in some circumstances to actually go through that. And then you still have to go through design engineering and then construction, which would then further, delay a lot of the elements on this project. So you're kind of separating those two pieces from each other. So we're dealing with just really what's interior of the park area. And then these traffic calming elements we'll look at doing, a little bit further down the road. But for right now, it's not included as part of the project.
Okay. Thank you for addressing his concerns. Ryan, John, Jim. Jim, did you have any did I already ask you, Jim? Any questions? Elena, did you have any questions?
No, thanks.
And then Emily is dropped, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the only question I had, Chris, or a couple questions. In the working group, was the need for the concrete behind the baseball, let's call it cages and stands area, a request by people? Because it's just, I mean, I've lived here. I lived right around the corner from here for, I don't know, almost 10 years now. I mean, it's little kids playing. I mean, they're max 5 years old. I mean, is that extreme of concrete necessary from, a baseball standpoint? I mean, it just seems like a lot of extra concrete to add all right around those trees and in that area. Is it really, really needed? I guess would be my question. Was that part of the working group of why that's like that?
The specific design of the backstops was not really an element that was discussed much that I recall as part of the working group. I do know that there was a lot of discussion on how the backstop should be designed in the sense of the height of the fencing and all those types of elements, but the actual, bleacher areas and behind that was not really discussed a lot. This design is kind of a more or less a common design you would see on a lot more of the more modern ball field installations around the area. A lot of this, I think, is actually pulled right from the Fairfax County Facilities Manual in terms of how it's designed. So that's what I can really say about that detail.
Yeah, it just seems, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of unnecessary concrete for when these fields, because they do back up to each other, like they're never going to be able to be used for high level little league play. I mean, they literally will max out at age, 5 or 6. Right now I think pretty sure it's all T-ball. I don't even know if it's coach pitch here. So I think that is a standard detail, and I think that's why it's drawn in. I don't know if you have anyone from Kipling Horn.
That's when Liam was playing there.
But it's like, is all that extra concrete really necessary? I guess would be my only pushback on the plan. I think overall the sidewalk idea to kind of connect the trails all, to kind of have a loop for, if kids want to, run around or, ride their scooter, or moms or dads are walking their kids in a stroller, while their kid is playing on the ball field. I think it's a great, idea. My only question is that extra concrete really needed around the actual ball field, because it's going to take away all that green space that's there now, between the field and the dirt. It's now just going to become, straight concrete. It's extra water runoff. I know we have a ton of grass here, so it's not probably too much of a concern. But just from an aesthetic standpoint, for all those neighbors kind of surrounding, I don't know if they really know exactly what this plan is saying when they're reviewing it or when they're notified about it. And it just seems like a lot of unnecessary, not only, and I'm an RA member as well, it just seems like a lot of expense for concrete that we don't really need, to be perfectly honest. But that's why I was asking.
From a kind of anecdotal standpoint that I've seen on some of our other ball field areas that have relatively narrow concrete walkways around their backstops and player areas, is that you often start to see kind of rutted, grassless, goat paths, if you will, from one side to the other, as oftentimes there's a lot of traffic moving from one side of the area to the other. And so that ends up kind of kicking people kind of off of what would usually be the walkway. And I would imagine the design detail that Kimley Horn established was kind of to maintain a wide enough walking area between the two sides, between guest and home team dugout areas, to try to keep people on the concrete versus walking off of it and into the grass areas instead. Because I've seen similar problems at other ball fields that have very thin, backstop concrete areas. But if there's abilities to thin this out a little bit, I can look into that and see if it's feasible.
Yeah, staff, if you go to slide, just go down one slide to the proposed ball field, or I guess go back, sorry, up a page. It's page 32 in mine. Yeah. So you see these little wings, Chris, if you zoom in, staff, let's say to the north field, and you see how when you come up the sidewalk, you can go to the left, and that's where the proposed bleachers are, the backstop, et cetera, and then to the other set of bleachers. I think that area maybe makes sense for the concrete, but then they have these additional wings that are going out to the right, which I assume is just for additional viewing space. You know,
I think those are actually player benches. Then you have the spectator benches next to it.
So there's no actual dugouts or anything. It's just a sitting area, basically.
Yeah, so you see that kind of singular bench there on that.
Oh yeah, because I see the gate, so that's how the
Yep.
kids get in and out of the field.
Yep.
I almost feel like that should be switched, but maybe I don't know baseball well enough. Anyways, I don't know. I'm torn because they only use these fields for, you know, probably, I don't know, 4 months out of the year, if that. And so it just seems like a lot of extra concrete for no reason, but that's just my 2 cents. Overall, I think aesthetically it's good for the conceptual side of things. The pavilion, I think, is on the right path. I think having a heavy timber structure like that would work in the overall design there. I mean, I think it's replacing that pergola that's there now, right? Or that trellis, whatever we want to call it. Whatever it is, it's going to be better than the current porta-john that sits there. So it's a much better improved option than what we have at the moment. So does anyone else have any other questions, comments, thoughts on the concrete surrounding these things?
My only comment was going to be on the pavilion. I play tennis here. I use the facilities, so I very much appreciate adding the pavilion. I think it's a much needed. I was not a fan, Michael, of the heavy timber look. I think it makes sense for like this company. They seem based out of Oregon and stuff like that. It didn't really seem quite appropriate for Reston, in my opinion. And that was just kind of a question that I raised. So I like the addition of it. I like the idea of it, but I don't necessarily like this design for it. It just doesn't seem very fitting for Reston, in my opinion. Just looking at I think most of our pavilions we've got it like Temporary Road and Lake Ann and stuff like that. The detailing is just a lot simpler. And I think one of the photos shows this thing, you know, with like a kind of an enhanced base. I can't find the slide. Shoot. There's a picture of it on slide 15. So I don't know if that's the design or if that's, I don't want to hold up, you know, concept approval, but that's, in my opinion, that's a concern, is like that kind of design aesthetic for that pavilion.
I would say that if the board is okay with the location, the size, and the general concept of a combination, that I think the aesthetic detail can kind of be figured out later on once we actually get to, you know, that level of review, as well as the permits for construction, because that still has to be kind of worked out from the county's perspective as well. And the design aesthetic, I think there's multiple options that they provide, and I think we could probably find something that would be more, you know, likable to the group.
I like that just because, Michael, I don't think it's replacing the trellis that's there. I think it's replacing the little like screen wall with the porta-john, but it's going to be right next to that trellis area.
I'm not realizing that. For some reason, I thought they were replacing that with it. I now see that it's actually going behind it, basically. Yeah. So the only comment I would agree with you, Brian. I would say that they need to kind of coordinate together. Is that trellis in decent shape? I mean, I know it's been there a little while.
I think it would probably end up being removed. I think that's supposed to be a kind of a seating area or a congregation area. I'm not sure if that trellis would actually stay as it is when we get to that portion of the project.
Yeah, so maybe that needs, it says covered pavilion and concrete pad to be removed on phase 2 site plan from what I'm seeing here. So it looks like it does get removed.
Sorry.
And
I missed that.
Yeah, so it gets removed and then they're kind of doing a new swooping sidewalk to get kind of back up to the current sidewalk.
Yep.
To go back over to the ball field. So if, a kid needs to go to the bathroom, it's a quicker path to the bathroom. Yeah, so I mean, conceptually, I'm fine with the location. I do think I think overall combining them into one, I think it makes sense, from a site planning perspective. I think maybe the building just needs a little bit more reference to some of our other pavilions. I mean, I know we don't probably have the money for this, but I love like the North Hills Pavilion. They didn't incorporate a bathroom, so that's the one negative of North Hills Pavilion. But the architecture on the North Hills Pavilion is, monumental. I don't know if we necessarily need something to that scale here, but that is kind of a heavy timber structure there, Brian. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but that one's done a little bit differently. But I do think integrating them together is a good step. So from conceptual approval, I think it's fine. I think we just might want to reference a little bit more of our other pavilions for design inspiration for the final kind of layout. I mean, even think of Lake Anne's Pavilion, it's obviously, once again, much more of an architectural monument versus just being a simple building. So maybe there's some ways we can look at some of the other pavilions we have now and take some inspiration from them. Any other thoughts, comments? One last thing that I saw, Chris, with the removals that we have with the trees, is there any sort of landscaping plan to put back any new trees? I mean, I know right now it's kind of a bunch of evergreens all surrounding here. There's a couple of deciduous, I think, along Fairway. Is there any sort of landscaping plan to put any other trees back, particularly on the south? I guess it's the south side towards Hook Road there. I know there's some openings. There's kind of some openings where like 3 trees used to be that now are all dead. Are we looking to put any trees back here or no?
In the current landscaping plan, there isn't anything detailed except for a transplant of 1 tree as part of this project. However, I'm sure that as part of the work and maybe post construction, at least of the pathways, we'll look at installing kind of new trees in locations that are a little bit more fitting and ensuring they're also not going to be a problem with the ball fields themselves. We want to, of course, move them too far inward of the field and then they become an object hazard. But we would definitely be wanting to replace any of the trees that are failed or dead. And I would think that any of the trees we're removing, we would probably want to replace it in or at the exact location, as close as we can at least. But that isn't really planned out just yet as to what that would be. But I would imagine that as part of maybe the phase 2 efforts, we would want to be doing some additional landscaping throughout the site.
Okay. Anybody have any other thoughts, comments? Motion?
Are we going to treat them separately, phase 1 and phase 2, in terms of motion?
We can. If you have 2 different motions, depends on what your motion is, I guess.
Well, I would make a motion to approve the phase 1 development project as submitted.
Any comments, questions?
I'll second that. I'm curious to hear part 2.
So since we're splitting it out, let's vote on that one first. But let me add a comment to you now that you've seconded it. The only thing I would say is I do think we should request a, Chris mentioned a landscaping, initiative kind of post-construction. I would like to see an overall site landscaping plan submitted for phase 1 area and phase 2 area when they come back for full approval of phase 2. But I guess it kind of depends on what Brian's about to say for phase 2. But
Maybe I should just kill the suspense because there's nothing crazy about phase 2. I just feel like we had some more comments since it's concept only. So that was the only reason I was trying to separate them.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, then I'll leave my landscape comment for phase 2 motion then. Because overall, it's still the same site, so I can make my same comment for that section. So there's a motion, there's a second. Let's go ahead and take a vote. So for motion for approval of phase 1, say aye.
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 Aye. Any abstentions? Or sorry, any against it? All right, any abstentions? All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, so let's hear phase 2 motion, Brian.
I will motion to approve phase 2 in concept only as submitted, with the stipulation that the applicant study the architectural design and details of the pavilion a little bit further, to be more harmonious with kind of the Reston, and to with the stipulation that the applicant provide an overall site landscaping plan.
And I would just amend that to say to include 1-for-1 tree removals that were healthy, which I think was really only like 2 of them. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. How many? I think there's only like 2 really healthy trees.
I think they're actually marked as fair. That the one that were coming out. We double check that.
Oh yeah, I guess they are just fair. Technically, I don't know what that means. Fair could be, well, I guess there is good, fair. They're just a couple of, the reason why I say it is I know there are a couple of them are just Eastern pines, but they're pretty substantially large trees. So I just think it'd be good to have a 1-for-1 replacement, and they could just be they could be understory trees if that's appropriate, or something smaller caliper, because those pines obviously get very large and very tall and can become unbalanced. So just I think for the trees that are technically still, let's say they're fair, the 3 trees, I would just want to see 3 replacements for those trees as part of that landscaping plan, plus other landscape improvements. So Brian,
I like it. Yes. Yep.
All right. So I'll second your motion then. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any other further discussion? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Any against? Any abstentions? All right. Motion passes 6-0. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Have a good night.
You too. All right. Moving on to design guidelines updates. I think we're officially sending the memo. LaShonda tackled string lights to the best of her ability. I think that's really the main one in here, right, LaShonda?
The string lights, and then revisions to the tear down infill that you requested back in September.
Gotcha.
Did you want me to go through them real quick?
Yeah, so but just so we know before you're looking for approval for this to be included in the memo that we're going to send for our design guideline updates to the board, correct?
To Bach for the December meeting, and then eventually to the board, yes.
Okay, cool.
So let's start with If you could go to page 4. So we added criteria for string lighting, specifically for the location, saying that the string lights on houses, bushes, patio covers, balconies, and along fences are not permitted to be operational, except when in use for the illumination of backyards, or enclosed front yards or side yards during the periods of time when such areas are occupied for recreational, entertaining, or seasonal holiday purposes. And string lights are not to be used for safety or security purposes.
Could you back up just 1 second? Just go back to the previous page, sorry. Okay, thanks.
Do you want me to just go through because this is going to be for all of the all of the decorative lighting.
Yeah, no, I don't think you need to go through them for all of them. They're all the same. I think the only thing I would ask is, when did we add verbiage of rope lighting?
That was something that was just added. I can remove it.
I just hesitate because to me a rope light is like that plastic tube that has a bunch of lights inside of it and the tubing is continuous, and I don't think any of that should be allowed at all.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels about it, but that usually a rope light is like concealed, and it's, provide ambient lighting. So if but it's not out in the open like a string light would be. So I would prefer to remove that term from the guideline.
Okay.
Yep.
So the next paragraph is string lights are to be installed so they are as straight as possible, limiting drooping, and that don't over illuminate the area. And then when on tree trunks and wrapped around, we gave it a limit number that the string lights can wrap around the trees, which was a reasonable 10 feet. That's just so it doesn't over illuminate the area.
I'm not sure about the straight as possible. I'm not sure that the string lights look good taut.
Yeah, I'm okay with a little droop.
Yeah, I think a little droop is good.
Okay.
I think that's why we added it the way that we added it, in limiting the droop, specifically because of the way that the design guideline is written. The areas of focus are really backyards or enclosed front and side yards. So you're really not going to see the lights in theory unless it's a single family home in theory. So not requiring it, but at this review level, we wanted to try and be more consistent with what other HOAs are doing as it relates to string lights. So if you wanted to get rid of the drooping part, we're happy to do that. But I think for us, we wanted to try and encourage lights to be installed in a manner that is more discreet. I don't know if that gets us closer to that or not, Elena, but I think
I don't see the drooping as being less discreet than a taut straight line. I don't understand the nice droop is actually what makes them interesting rather than a taut line.
Gotcha.
So I don't agree with that.
And I think it's saying limiting droop. I mean, no droop is not possible, obviously. So, I mean, I think there's times for, where if it's all, hung along a privacy fence on the inside of the townhouse, wall, let's say the fence, and it droops, I think that can look nice. If it's on a railing, as an example, and it droops, it looks nice. If it goes all the way across a yard and it droops and down to, 4 feet from the ground in the middle of the yard, then it doesn't look nice. So there's kind of a, we've always gone back and forth on these string lights because it's like trying to wrangle in a herd of cats. It's gonna be a very difficult ask. I think if we say limiting droop, it kind of is up for interpretation on what droop is allowed and what is not. And
Well, I
at the end of the
think
day,
what
it's enforceable, right?
yeah, I think what concerns me is this is as straight as possible.
Yes, correct.
I think that we don't want to say. I think we want to say limiting droop. Somehow say that, but as straight as possible means you're trying to make it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like it. Yeah. So maybe we can amend that.
Say
LaShonda.
a tasteful droop.
Tasteful droop.
Okay. Noted. So we go on to say, at the discretion of the DRB, string lights may be limited to certain locations or reduced to minimize the light pollution and unwanted glares to adjacent properties.
Yeah.
So the next section is for illumination levels and color temperature. Just wanted to get the board's opinion if you would like to reduce the lumens from, it's currently 1500.
So we had talked previously about when the last application from Isles Cove came in, the county has the 1500 lumens as the max. And we had talked about dancing around the 900 range to even more promote dark skies. So we wanted just a final determination from the DRB in terms of, are we okay with aligning ourselves with the 1500 lumens similar to the county? We also did some research and we went back. The county is actually moving away from measuring in foot candles because of the glare concerns that foot candles don't measure. So of course, if we have a design guideline, it's always helpful to align it to Fairfax County because that's a supportive measure for us and enforcement. So just looking for feedback in terms of the lumens.
Well,
so I'm sorry. So is that where the county's going with lumens? Where is the county?
The county's currently 1500 lumens is what their measurement is.
Yeah.
And I could be remembering incorrectly, but I thought we talked about potentially, to me, trying to tell a person that you can't go over 1500 lumens, they're not going to have, a lot of string lights don't even have that information available. I thought we talked about limiting, like you could have up to, this is clustered, but you could have up to, whatever it was, 30 feet of strand with 15 bulbs. And that was like kind of your max without needing an application or something to that effect. Did we talk about that, or am I mistaken? I thought we talked something like that.
We talked about foot candles.
Yeah, I know Emily brought that up with the foot candles, but I remember saying, like, because we were trying to find something that was enforceable. And to me, lumens is not enforceable. I don't know how we would, everyone's going to buy half these things on Amazon or at Costco, and it's not going to have the information of the lumens for the physical strand. So I just wonder, I thought we were thinking of, like, if you had less than 30 feet of strand, you're good to go essentially without an application. If you have over 30 feet, you need to have an application in. Is that, am I, maybe I'm going crazy. I swear we thought.
No, that's what we talked about.
Yes, we did talk about that. And part of, we're happy to add that, but part of the issue is we weren't sure what the threshold should be. Is it, 1 30-foot strand with 30 lights, or is it 100-foot strand? It was very hard to gauge. Because everyone's going to be different.
Like a homeowner can only be so intrusive on others if they're only allowed like a 30-foot strand without getting approval. Whereas 1500 lumens, I don't know offhand what that looks like in a string light for me to put that in a guideline. I don't know. So I don't know if we need to, we need to find something. I need to find something online and order a strand and see how far does 1500 lumens get us? I don't know. Is that 120 feet of string? Is that? Is that 10 feet of string? I just don't know. Do you?
Good point. And I think that that's part of the reason why we added the in parentheses similar to a 75-watt bulb, because you can measure those in watts. And I think from our research, one bulb on a string light is about 1 watt. So in theory, you're looking at up to 75 bulbs on a strand, or 2 strands, or up to 75 bulbs to get that measurement. So we could do it that way. And then that way it's easier for homeowners to provide the manufacturer details in terms of how much wattage is per bulb to determine the information that we're seeking. That makes sense. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this ad putting in the watts, because just doing a quick look online for string lights, and they all seem to be measured in watts, and I think that would be more understandable to most homeowners.
Yeah, it's just tricky because like what I'm seeing is, this string light that's only 14 feet long, right, is 880 watts for the whole string. So are you saying 75 watts per bulb or 75 watts total?
75 watts per bulb. I mean, per total, sorry.
Yeah, and I just don't know. I do think we should control it by watts, because I do think that the issue is LEDs are measured in different watts than, let's say, incandescent. So it's not it's not easy necessarily to do it that way. That's why I was thinking if we just said, okay, you're allowed 30 feet of string. Some people might have brighter bulbs, some people might have not as bright bulbs, but if we try to control the temperature of the light, and we still put in there about the glare, then we know that they're limited. And if they're over the limit, it's very easy to count. Hey, you have 60 bulbs, you're only allowed 30, or something to that effect. To me, it's a lot more enforceable. Watts, I think, are still probably enforceable, but I don't know how in reality we're going to be able to enforce it. I'm just trying to do some quick. Like, it's so tough because every string light is different. Like this one, each bulb is 7 watts and there's 20 lights. So that alone, this seems pretty nominal. Just as an example, Cam, I find these are like little Edison bulbs that are 7 watts a piece, and there's 20 lights. That's already 140 watts. Like, technically this strand, which is only 20 feet long, wouldn't be allowed, and it seems like it would be pretty nondescript and not very bright at all. So I don't know if that's enforceable or not enforceable, but even practical to limit it to 75 watts total for the bulb, or for the whole strand.
So at the staff review level, do you want to go to, let's say, 50 feet and no more than 45
bulbs for staff level review? Like so that means they still need an application, is what you're saying? Yeah, I think that makes more sense to count the number of either feet of there or number of bulbs. The number of bulbs is probably better than feet. But say you're not extending 50 feet or 45 bulbs. I think that's perfect. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Yeah, because keep the 50 feet in there, Cam, because I'm looking and you can get like 100-foot worth of string with only 48 bulbs, but each of these bulbs is 15 watts. So in this instance, this one would need to come, wouldn't be staff removable. It would need to go to a panel because it's over the 50 feet of string. Well, I guess technically it's over the 45 bulbs as well, but I think that's a good stopping point. That way you'll be able to catch, basically the main POA ones that you guys are getting pretty easily, I feel like, for those townhouse backyards, etc. But any of these major installations people do in the backyards would have to come to a panel if they're over that. So I think that's good.
Okay, so we're replacing that top paragraph, string lights shielded, unshielded, with string lights shielded, unshielded, do not exceed more than 50 feet or 45 bulbs per strand. We're no longer going to reference lumens or watts.
We could, from what I see, is that watts is pretty typical when you're ordering these things.
Mhm.
So I think we could limit that the bulbs are no more than 10 watts a piece or something to that effect. It seems like that's pretty industry that you'd be able to find.
May I make a comment?
Go for it.
LED versus incandescent, is LED is far lower in wattage consumption, and so there's some confusion there that I think would be exacerbated in this description.
Agreed.
Almost all string lighting these days is LED. I would say almost all illumination period is LED these days. So going back to the wattage thing is a little bit of a misnomer these days.
Good point.
I agree completely. We do address the LED part lower in the section, I believe. Yes, we do. Energy efficient LED bulbs with warm color temperature around 2700 Kelvin to reduce light pollution are encouraged.
I would make that the standard, forget, forget anything but LED because that's all you can buy these days.
Right.
Personally, I put incandescent still, because I like the color temperature. But I don't even have string lights, so I don't have skin in the game. So, so yeah, I think that's why if we limit the number of bulbs in the strands, I think, and then we have the recommendations of the color temperature and the LEDs with the color temperature, I think we're going to be covered, and it's enforceable by you all, which I think is ultimately the most important aspect of the guideline. In those rare instances that the string lights become an issue for, neighbors, that's essentially the only time it really is going to be needed to be enforced.
Right.
All right. And then I saw you guys put a time limitation on it. Do we think that's allowed? Because I thought legal told us we couldn't do that.
Yeah. I kind of feel funny about the fact that you have to be outside people leave their Christmas lights up in the winter now because everybody likes that bright twinkly light. But
so there was lots of thought on this one in terms of the time. We looked at what other associations were doing, and some associations do restrict the time. It is something that we need to be careful on, but that's why we specifically mentioned that these types of lights are prohibited unless they're being done for entertainment, recreation, or being in an occupied space or seasonal holiday purposes.
Yeah.
Because then that way it's enforceable. If a homeowner has a concern about their neighbor using the lights and they're on, they can confirm that they're on and provide that information to Reston Association for enforcement.
Yeah. Once again, I think it's only when people complain is when this is going to be needed. And so You know, if someone's leaving on their lights and it's not bothering anybody, nobody's gonna know the wiser. Is basically, it's more of just for those rare complaint cases that that staff has to deal with.
Right.
And if they come to us, if it goes past that. So,
And I will also tell you, just for transparency's sake, there are, oh my gosh, I don't even remember. There are 5 lawyers on the RA board of directors. And this has to hit them at some point and come back to you all. So I'm sure there will be plenty of discussion related to this particular item.
okay. Sounds good. Well, if anyone else has any other comments, or you want to jump over to the infill guideline.
Okay. So if you jump down to page 17, I wanted to get the DRSB's thoughts on if you all thought that the definition should be edited for like the approximate percentage that constitutes a tear down. Would you like to maybe lower it or raise it? Like per Fairfax County, the percentage is generally, calculated based on square footage of the existing structure that's going to be demolished. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
So this came up as a part of 2360 Tumbletree Way, if you all remember that application. The home was being redone and comments were about the home looking like Vienna, not Reston. That came up as a part of the process of reviewing this application as to whether or not that application was an infill project based on this definition or this excerpt of approximately 25%. What does 25% actually mean?
Well, right. What if they're not removing any walls? They're just removing the roof and going up.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a project right now, right? I'm I'm dealing with this. Technically, I did all additions, and then I only removed probably, I don't know, 18, 19, 20% of one portion of the roof. But it warranted a full. I mean, it's a new, relatively new house. So there's definitely ways to. I think we maybe just need to clarify. To me, it's not always, I think nowadays specifically, it's not necessarily a tear down. I think like the project we reviewed tonight, I forget the address on it. I have
Turf Lane.
Turf Lane. That's a pretty rare circumstance where most people are not going to tear down their house completely and restart. Most are going to do additions or add additional square footage. So I almost think we could put, to me, a tear down infill, maybe it's not considered a tear down infill, but maybe it's if you're adding over 25% square footage wise or something, that then it kicks in. I mean, what guideline is this anyway? Why would you ever be doing tear down infill of a cluster? Why do we even have this?
There are cluster associations that are single family homes.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
So I think tying it to square footage is a good idea. Personally, I think ultimately though, it's nowadays I think stuff is going to be moving more towards additions than anything else. And so I know we have an additions guideline. So I don't know if we really need to change this, because to me, like even whatever you reference that project, I know which one you're talking about. To me, most of that they were doing additions to the house. They weren't tearing it down. They weren't pouring a whole new foundation. They weren't doing what we just saw tonight with Turf Lane, right? I don't know. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I mean, I had a recommendation in terms of tear down is demolishing and clearing approximately 50% or more of an existing structure and construction of a new structure on a lot within an established neighborhood. I think that
50% of what though? Does it have to be square footage?
um
It's like, what if I just take off the whole roof of my house? That's not square footage. I haven't affected any square footage.
I would say it's a occupiable square footage.
But then you're talking footprint or like actual gross square footage of the residence in question, right?
Well, right. So that's why I'm like, should it be tied to you're increasing the square footage by 50% as an example, Cam? Then it's considered an official tear down infill. Because let's say you did have a Rambler that's 1,500 square feet and you rip the whole roof off and add another 1,500 square feet on top of it in the exact same footprint. To me, you've impacted over, you've added 50% square footage that would qualify as a tear down infill if you're over 50%. So you'd have to be at 51% to do that. So theoretically, if you ripped off the whole roof of a house and didn't do any sort of bump outs or anything, you would be in compliance of just being an addition. But as soon as you added that 51%, you would then need to be considered a tear down infill. I feel like that's reasonable. I mean, it's not like we put you through any different hoops for a tear down infill. You still have to do all the same things. I mean, right? I mean, it's pretty much all the same requirements.
Sure. So 50% or more of the existing occupiable square footage, is that what I heard?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could say occupiable, or I mean, then people could argue you're not counting garages, which, technically they don't count when you look at a square footage of a house. So I think that's a good designation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we added a statement for the advisory section that all the tear down and infill submissions must undergo review by the DRB secretary before scheduling. And this measure was just intended to just streamline the process and hopefully reduce the likelihood of deferrals. And on page 19, amended the checklist, just adding some additional criteria to the site plan, grading plan, drainage plan. We also added a lighting plan because that wasn't included before. And then also added some additional criteria to clarify what should be included in the landscaping plan. And then lastly, incorporated some information for homeowners to where they can find their plats in the comment section. Just given the frequent inquiries we received, I thought it would be helpful to add. And that is it.
Was there anything else that the DRB would like us to add in terms of requesting? I think one of the things that LaShonda added that I absolutely love was getting approved by the DRB secretary before scheduling. I think that will really help reduce the lack of information supplied in advance of full DRB meetings for these types of projects.
And maybe I'm naive. That doesn't happen now.
It's an internal process that we recently started because what ends up happening is that members are really, really excited about their projects. And we are adamant that, hey, this is what needs to be provided. And what ends up happening is they kind of segue into being and saying that they're going to have their architects speak to anything else that the DRB may want to address. And so we are affirming our position that the DRB secretary has the position to make that decision.
Okay, I like it. Use it wisely. The only thing I would comment, I think all the updates are fine. I think the only thing I would do is the drainage plan really is like the grading plan, that they are one in this the same. I just think adding that as maybe a sub note under the grading plan that basically states that, because the drainage plan directs, like kind of how you have this note that says for further clarification on erosion and sediment control, conservation plan and stormwater management plan. That's really the stormwater management plan really is the drainage plan. So if we're requiring specifically for the tear down infill that they provide us, like a lot of them don't know when they come to us that they need to provide, the Fairfax County grading plan when they come to us. I feel like we ask for it all the time because I'm like, you guys have to have this. It exists. And they're like, oh, I didn't know you guys wanted to see it. I just think as long as we're clear and to say whatever you guys basically are submitting for a grading / stormwater plan to the county to provide to us, because they're going to require it as well.
Yeah.
Or for impacting more than 51% or 50% of the square footage, that's going to kick in that anyways. There are some ways around it. But if the county requires it, we'd want to see it essentially. So I just think joining those back together would be fine. I don't think we need to we could put that if a grading plan is not required with the county and you're impacting the existing drainage, that you could submit a drainage plan if for some reason a grading plan isn't required. Which does happen. Like my house, I did not have to do a drainage plan because I was only impacting a certain amount of square footage. But it was there's certain times that you don't do it, but there are certain times that you are required. So I think if the county requires it, we want to see it.
Okay. Any additional feedback? Any other feedback?
No, good work. Thank you for your diligence on this. Hopefully the Bach likes it.
I need a motion to approve the last two.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommended changes to the guidelines with our comments
As amended.
Yeah.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Right. I think our last thing is our calendar.
Yeah, 2024 calendar. If anybody has any conflicts with the panels that have been assigned to this, please let me know. You can send me an email. I can get that updated. But yeah, that's the last item.
Cool. Well, everybody take a look, let us know. Do you guys know who terms are up this year or coming year, just so people are aware?
So coming up 2024, you're Michael Wood, you're March 2024. Bruce is March 2024. Jim, you're going to be March 2024. And yep, that's it.
There's a lot of us. Okay, so 3 of us. All right. Cool. I did have one question, just really quick. Everybody bear with me. I've had multiple members ask me if we're ever going to get this as a DRB, and I don't know if it's up to us or not. But electronic signature ability on applications, is that ever, you think, is that ever going to be possible with, I know I had a long meeting one point with, I forget who I was talking with. I think it was maybe Jennifer from the board at the time. I don't even know if she's still on the board. But we were talking about trying to find a way to simplify the application process and being able to get digital signatures and just, blast it out. We have everyone's email. Why can't we just send a DocuSign over to our neighbor rather than trying to have to worry about getting digital signatures or certified mail? Anyways, it's an off-topic line. I've had multiple people come up to me and ask me about it recently, so I thought I'd throw it out there and maybe something that we can think about. There's got to be a way that we can I mean, I can sign closing documents for a mortgage now via DocuSign. There's got to be a way to sign
When
it
you
to the application.
when you say digital signatures, I'm not sure I understand because we accept digital signatures.
We do like where if I send all if, but we don't facilitate it though, I guess.
No, we do not. So the
You
application
have to
is
facilitate it as the applicant.
right. So the application is fillable. It is able to be signed digitally by anyone. But I do think one of the things that comes up often, and maybe this is kind of aligned with what you were thinking, is that hopefully our new website will allow people to submit applications through the website page, and then hopefully potentially trigger the ability for their neighbors to be inputted into a system that will then notify them to sign an application instead of
Yes.
having to do it in terms of seeking them out to find out what their email address is or knocking
Yeah.
on doors or whatever.
Yeah, perfect.
But that's like infancy right now.
Well, nurture it, give it some milk and get it growing to be real because people want that. So all right, cool.
Understood.
All right, everybody. Anyone want to make a motion?
I move we close the meeting.
We have a motion to close the meeting. Anybody want to second that?
Second it.
All right, everybody send your RSVPs into LaShonda for our party.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, bye everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye. Have a good night.
Guys, thank you, staff. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, LaShonda. Thank you, everybody else that I didn't say from